Hello, everyone, and welcome to this hybrid event, Great Taste, Zero Waste. We have participants joining us at our venue in Riga, Latvia, as well as those of us who are participating remotely from places like Poland, Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, and other parts of the Nordic region. And so thank you everyone for joining us today, wherever you are in the world, whether you're in person or remote. So my name is Afton Halloran, and I have the great pleasure of moderating this event today. At the Great Taste Zero Waste Conference has been arranged jointly by the Royal Danish Embassy, the Nordic Council of Ministers in Latvia, the Danish Cultural Institute, and EIT Food. And this event is funded by the European Union. So today is all about discussing the ways to understand and reduce and prevent food waste. Did you know that 8 to 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions are associated with food that's not consumed? Or that of the food that's wasted globally, 61% of that waste is actually coming from households, and 26% is coming from food service, and 13% is coming from retail. And while an estimated 20% of total food produced is lost or wasted, 33 million people in the EU cannot afford to eat a quality meal every second day. But why is this happening, and how do we even get into this situation in the first place? Well, there's many reasons for that. And some of these reasons are because of standardization in portion sizes in restaurants and canteens, or because of insufficient food management skills, for example, in meal preparation, or how we use leftovers. And also low perceived value of food, the relatively low cost of food in many parts of Europe, and also busy lifestyles and conflicting priorities. These are just some of the reasons why food goes to waste. We all understand that this is a major problem and that it requires multiple solutions. And we also know that the approaches that we take, they must be culturally appropriate and socially acceptable, or else they won't be implemented. And for this reason, we've divided up the program today into 4 sections for you. So first of all, we're going to hear some words from the organizers of the event, and we'll hear about why they're so interested in creating such an event and why this is coming at this time in particular. And then we'll also learn about the importance of data when it comes to understanding how we reduce the amount of food that we're wasting, and also the kinds of food that we're wasting. And then we'll follow that by diving into some specific solutions on how to prevent food waste, because we actually want to give you something tangible that you can work with and take home with you today. And then we're going to finish all of that off, the discussion on how chefs and other food service professionals are doing their part to ensure great taste and zero waste. So at any point in the event today, if you have a question or perhaps even a comment that you'd like one of the speakers to reflect on, I'd like you to send an email to Maya Kale, and her email address is Maya, MAIJA, at Norden, NORDEN.LV. So I'll just say that one more time. It's MAIJA at Norden, NORDEN.LV. And so we will take those questions into consideration, and I will pose the questions to the different speakers when we've received them. So now I would like to invite the first group of speakers onto the stage to join me. And we're going to start first with the director of the Danish Cultural Institute in Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. This is Simen Drusen Holmberg, and he's going to join us on the stage. He's followed by EIT food representatives, Radowska and Alexandra Niestra, and they're also sitting up on the stage as well. And then finally, we have Nordic Council of Ministers, the Nordic Council of Ministers office in Latvia, representatives Stefan Eriksson and Maja Kalle. And so I'm going to give the floor first to Simon to give some words about welcome to everyone, as well as any other words that you have for the audience joining us today. The floor is yours, Simon.
Hello. So first of all, welcome to you all here. It's great to see you at the third of our Great Taste Zero Waste events here in Riga. Third of the four we are doing during this week. And I would say on behalf of the Danish Embassy and the Danish Cultural Institute, sort of the whole area of food waste has been very important for us. It is very important for in Denmark. It's one of the things which have been started there, this fight against food waste, and also something which we've been very happy to assist together with colleagues in addressing in the Baltic Sea region and elsewhere. I think what is quite why this is important is, as was already mentioned, that we have a very big task if we are going to reduce food waste to a degree where it really matters, not just as some small thing for events, but something that everybody does in their everyday lives back home. And this is one of these first steps in that direction. And I think that's also why we are moving on different fronts. We have this thing about with restaurants and restaurateurs, which we're doing, but we also have reached out to schools, and we have reached out to the general public, and that's what I think these areas are really important for us. And I think not just to work just one of them, but to work on them all of them. And also, I would say another thing for the Baltic Sea region as such, which is becoming still more important, is sort of circular lifestyles, i.e. where we again reduce our footprint on this earth, how much energy we use, how much food we spend, we eat and waste. We are working still more of this, and this is part of this of this movement to assist and help in that. And that is really, really important for us. I mean, not to be sort of too grand about this, but it's actually important for that our region and actually our world can survive, that we do reduce our footprints, that we do become better at using the planet which we are in temporary custody of and should be there for our children, grandchildren and grandchildren's grandchildren, etc. So this is really an important thing. And I think what has been a very good experience with this is because we have been doing it not only in Latvia, but also in Lithuania and of course in the Nordic countries. Well, I mean, there seemed to be a big movement to support this and to work with this. I really hope that it's not just something that people can talk about or can spend a day on, but it's something that can become part of everybody's life. And with events such as this and conferences such as this today, I'm quite sure that we are on the right track. So thank you very much, and I wish us all a good day today.
Thank you very much, Simon, and also for encapsulating why we are all talking about this topic today and why we should care. So I'm going to now hand it over to Eva Ryzhowska and Alexandra Nizinska, and they're coming from EIT Food. The floor is yours, Eva and Alexandra.
Thank you, Afton. Agree with everything what just has been said here, and I can briefly add that we as EIT Food are really happy that we could be a partner of this event, and take part in it and be here today as the bigger European initiative and the part of European Institute of Innovation and Technology. We are working in general on making our food system more sustainable, healthy and trusted. So this waste reduction, zero waste approach is really close to our home. And maybe I will give floor to Alexandra now.
And additionally, I feel that this event is like in the core of what we do in EIT Food, because we want to tackle the biggest European challenges like food waste as it is, but we also always do it with the great partners that we have here that partnered up to create this event and to gather us all together in order to support the innovators in the food sector. And I'm really happy that we have a chance to present some of them from the Baltics and the Nordics today to the audience. So I'm really looking forward to learn about the data solutions and of course the chef's approach to how to reduce food waste.
Thank you very much. And we're going to hear more from Era and also from Alexandra from EIT Food, and they'll talk a little bit more about some of the studies that they've been working on, but we'll hear about that a little later. But first, before doing that, let's hear from Stefan Eriksson and Maja Kalle from the Nordic Council of Ministers Office in Latvia. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Afton. No, I just want to say that the food topic has been on the Nordic agenda for some time already. And we were also very happy to start a Nordic-Baltic project in this area on future trends of food that was started already back in pre-COVID times, actually, with a big hackathon here in Riga. Then it has continued and developed, has been run by my colleague, Maja Kalle, and we are very glad that, well, this will be one of the final events of that project, and I especially want to express well, gratitude that we have managed to team up with partners for this final event. The Danes, as Simon has already said, has also paid attention to this subject, with in particular with food waste, which also fits in very well into our agenda. And then we have also added a European perspective with the EIT Food present in this event. So I think this is a very good example of cooperation, and it also shows that the interest for food topic is big, and I hope it will remain big also in the future. So thank you.
Yes, and if I may continue, right? So I am Maja, to whom you can send the emails in case you have questions or comments. And I'm very grateful to all the partners who are behind this event, and also technical partner Helve. And it seems that the future of food is definitely the future of less food waste. And we are here to discuss this future. And I welcome everyone and have a great time. And thank you for being here.
Thank you so much to the five of you. And I think, again, this is really a great way to exemplify why we need to cooperate at a regional level when we're dealing with such a large-scale problem and complex problem such as food waste. So without further ado, I'm going to move now, sorry, to the next part of our conference. And this is looking at data. So when we shift towards this topic, I think it's quite interesting to set the scene by saying, we often hear that what gets measured gets managed. And we know that precise data is really important for not only for understanding the problem such as food waste, but also to get policymakers to understand an issue and to understand where interventions can be made. So we know that data also fuels innovation. If we know that there are gaps or inefficiencies in the food system, we can also start to design improved processes and products. So some of the data that has been collected in the different kinds of studies that we're going to hear from are looking at current trends, but others are also looking at what we can expect going into the future and what might lie ahead in the road forward. So in this section of our conference, we're going to have 4 speakers who will tell us about some of the fascinating studies that they've been working on over the past few years. Some of them are related to the current pandemic, and others are just looking at overall trends that have been happening for some years now. So at the end of the session, we're going to have time for questions and answers from you, the audience. And so make sure, again, that you send your questions to Maya Kale at Maya, M-A-I-J-A, at Norden, N-O-R-D-E-N.lv. I'm just repeating that in case some of you have only signed on recently. So first of all, I would like to invite our speaker, Dr. Inga Belusa, who will be joining us from online. And she's the coordinator of responsible food consumption and global education projects, including Sincerely Food at the NGO Green Liberty. And among other things, she's a visiting professor about the project about about waste management at Vidisma University of Applied Sciences, and also a visiting professor at the University of Latvia and the Latvian Academy of Sport Education. So Inga, I'm going to hand the floor over to you. You're welcome to share your presentation now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Afton, and hello, everybody. First of all, let me congratulate all of you, those who organized the conference, about your great taste to speak about food waste. And thanks for inviting me to be a part of this discussion today. So now I would like to share my screen and to show some ideas that I have collected and might go here. So here we are. First of all, I'm very glad that I'm opening this discussion. So my ideas today will be connected with providing some global umbrella ideas for our discussions. And I have named my discussion today as with the title Inconvenient Side of the Food Waste. And I am going to speak about the organization Green Liberty's experience, where I have been taking part in the project Sincerely Food. And at the end, you will have the address, how to reach all the materials and so on. But first of all, let me guide you through some global ideas and global facts. As we all know that there is a lot of food waste. So actually to turn it into numbers, it could be more than 1/3 or around 40% of food produced for humans that is wasted. This is a huge amount. And each year, it has the number of 2.5 billion tons of waste. These are the most recent data that even provided us with a more precision, and the picture is not so happy. The amount of globally wasted food would be enough to feed 2 billion people if we calculate so. And this is twice the number of those undernourished in the world. And if you can convert them into numbers, and that constitute 815 million of the world's 7.7 billion people. So cutting food waste and using available food more effectively, this is the huge challenge for all of us, because it could improve food availability and food security in the world in general and in the regions of need particularly. The largest amount of consumer food waste is generated actually in higher income countries that we are part of, and especially it is about post-consumption food waste. If we speak about lower income countries, then you can say that food waste is more generated in the sectors of agriculture, distribution, processing, and transportation. Food waste in numbers in 3 different contexts. The global context, I have shared some ideas already, and here you see that there are some ideas about poorest regions. European Union as a second context that provides some data here, and per capita here you see that it is totally different situation. And I put here inside some Latvian data as well. And of course, as we all are interested in food waste issues, we might add some information here about our own local countries and regions that fit here into this picture. What does it say? So actually it says that global food supply chains should be covered or should be included in discussion about food waste as well, because food supply chains in the recent time, they are long and globalized because food is grown in one place, processed in another, and consumed in third. And the consumer often doesn't know the producer, and the producers no idea of who the consumer is. Here you can see the global food supply chain that is in a very general picture. Of course, we know that for each product it could be a little bit different picture as well. Where is the biggest amount of food wasted in European Union? You see that it is not like society says that it may be food service or production or even wholesales and retail sector. No, these are our households. And this is a huge amount, more than half or around the half of the food waste comes actually from our households. What is in the most wasted food basket? These data are pretty different, because we haven't yet figured out the very precise picture. But the picture says that a lot of them is cereals, a lot of them fruits and vegetables, meat and fish, and so on. It might be different from country to country, but the situation could be different a little bit in numbers, but the majority of wasted food basket is like you see in the picture. The inconvenient truth is asking the question, what is wasted with food waste actually? And my answers here are environmental quality that are connected to some resources like water, energy, materials, land. It is air, water, soil, and climate stability and biodiversity. The second is social possibilities that are lost, like I mentioned, food security, decent work, well-being, and economic possibilities that probably society in general cares about most. Of course, it is the question of money. And please see some pictures how the food waste is connected to land and to water. You know that from the agricultural land that is used to grow the food that is wasted, we can see that it is a landmass that is larger than the Indian subcontinent, and water volume actually very astonishing as well, because it is equivalent to 304 million Olympic swimming pools. And I put down the precise size of the swimming pool as well. What are the impacts of food waste? These are environmental impacts connected with climate change and global warming. And you see here that if the global food waste is a country, it would be the third largest greenhouse gas emitter after the US and China. Policies and initiatives addressing food waste. It is a major issue that helps us to see the common umbrella. And the major issue here is connected to Sustainable Development Goals, and I highlighted 4 of them that are very directly connected to food waste. Of course, all of them are more or less connected, but these are the most connected: 12, 2, 13, and 14, and 15. EU-level policies addressing food waste. So in general, they say that food waste reduction goal by 2030 is to reduce by around 50% per capita. This is a huge challenge for all of us, and that's why I appreciate each initiative that brings European, world's countries, neighboring countries together to address those food issues and to share good experiences. And tips and tricks to prevent food waste at home, they are different. And we might be all some wizards of food waste reduction. But if we collect all the tips and put into some groups, I would say that these are tips about meal planning. These might be tips about smart shopping. These are tips about proportioning, about smart storage, and reusing of leftovers. And here you see 3 examples that I would like to highlight, that we even can learn our whole life. And first of all, learnings are needed to know how to proportion food. This is the first picture. Then how to make a shopping list, and maybe technologies help us a lot in this. And the last one is the example how to put down information about the wasted food each day per meal, where we can see the total picture, for example, how much food is wasted during our weeks. Sincerely Food has been the great project, one of the great projects that was very actively enrolled during 3.5 years, and it brought a lot of countries together. I would like to give my compliments to colleagues from Estonia and Lithuania, saying that you can find your national translations of all the great materials provided in the project, the same as in Latvian. The English version as well. Please go to sincerelyfood.eu and you will find a lot of astonishing things that are connected to our households and food waste reduction there. Sources that I used, they are provided here. And as the final touch, I would like to say thank you for your attention. And I would be very glad to answer and to discuss together with you the questions that are very important for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much for really showing us a lot of that interesting data. I mean, every time I see some of those figures, I'm absolutely shocked that we're in this position. Even though I've seen them many times before, it's appalling how we've arrived in this place. And I think here it really sets the tone for the discussion. And now I want to move to our next speaker, who is going to look ahead into the future. So Dr. Michalis Grivens, he is going to share his insights from the Future Trends of Food project. Michalis is a researcher at the Baltic Studies Center, and he leads the research and study group Alternative Food Movements in Central and Eastern Europe. He has written publications on issues related to food initiatives, supply chains, wild products, agricultural financing, and the specifics of Eastern European food supply practices. So, Michalis, the floor is yours, and you're presenting live in Riga. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Afton. That's quite a new experience for me to talk via mask using microphone. I hope that works. I was encouraged by gestures to come here, so I hope I did the right thing. But yeah, it's nice to have this presentation in person. So I will be talking very shortly. I have just 10 minutes, so I will be galloping through my presentation. I tried to make it as colorful as possible. Not sure why, but I thought that that's the right approach to events like these. And the strange thing is that, so I'm talking about something we did together in the project called the Future of Food in Nordic Baltic region. And together with Afton and Maya, and Afton and Maya, we put together this report called 8 Megatrends of Food in Nordic Baltic region. It's titled a little bit different, but still, just go online, use Google, search for it, and you will find the report. And basically why I feel a little bit strange is because the first time I was talking about this report that happened 2 years ago, and that was under already pandemic had hit hard, and we had this discussion on the stage of Riga Plaza, which is quite a huge hall, and I was sitting there, Mai was sitting on the stage, and then Often joined online. And again, I'm talking about same report, and Afton is joining online, and we are trying to actually maneuver around the COVID restrictions. So yeah, with that being said, another short remark is today I'm talking about future because I'm really passionate about future studies, and I feel that it's very important that we are engaging more seriously with what tomorrow will bring us. But with that being said, we at our institute are also, we are starting a project called Circularity, which is addressing how resources are used in a circular way shared in circular way among agriculture, aquaculture, and forestry. And also we are currently working on a project called No Loss, so I hope if you will invite us next year, we will share some data from those projects. With that being said, this works, nice. I think, title of my presentation, the official title was Future of Food, so I suppose I have to problematize two things, food and future. So it's easy to problematize food. Basically, Afton and everybody else who were speaking before me already did that for me, problematize why we should talk more about food. So I assume my task is to problematize future. And I think it's a very simple task. Because, I suppose that all of you would agree that we need to think about the future. I'm not sure will everybody agree, but I would continue this claim by saying that we are surprisingly poorly equipped when we are trying to think about the future. Basically, we are making our assumptions based on the ideas that what we have witnessed in the past will actually work in the future, which might have worked when the time was moving very slowly, basically 19th, 18th century. But now we are witnessing that time is becoming faster, not that hours are becoming faster, but our experience in the world is becoming faster. That just means that any change that is chaotic and unpredictable will hit us significantly faster than it used to. So basically, if it worked at some point that we were extrapolating what we knew in the past to the future, now it doesn't. So that just means that we need new instruments how to think about future. And basically, the bottom line change, and I would hope that we will have a long discussion regarding what does it exactly mean, because as I said, I have just 10 minutes, and previous time I was talking about future, I had an hour just to explain methodology, so I'm a little bit short on time. But I think that the bottom line of what I'm trying to say is that we have to basically rethink how we claim, how we make claims about the future. And we used to make claims about most probable futures. Now, unfortunately, we don't have instruments to make what's most probable. So we have to talk about all plausible futures, and then from that we have to come to factors that how we are preparing ourselves to these plausible futures. So, and this is partly what we tried to do in our megatrends report. We didn't draw out all the plausible futures. We identified 8 megatrends that will affect our future. And more specifically, 8 megatrends that will affect food. And these are, again, unfortunately, I cannot go in detail in each of these megatrends. What I would encourage you to use this QR code and basically open this report when you're at home and just quickly glance through, and maybe you will find something interesting there. But basically, the 8 megatrends that we identified was concerned with how food chain is structured, how technologies and digitalization will affect the food systems, also how human values will affect food systems, how ideas about lifestyle, how general trends where society is going will affect food system. For example, we are talking about how generally growing anxiety or polarization of society, how the fact that we are becoming more divided will affect what we will eat and how food systems are structured. So basically, we tried to capture not just only the usual factors that are always there when we are talking about food systems, but we tried to capture also softer powers that we know that are there that affect the way how people are choosing what they eat, but that are quite rarely reflected upon. And so I could stop my presentation here and say, just Google our report, and you will find a lot of interesting things. But I would like to continue with something more specific data, and not coming from this report, but from another study on future trends that we did in institute I'm working in. And basically, that was a study on how enterprises engaged in food systems are seeing what will happen to the food sector and what will happen to them, in the near future. And why I'm showing this, use this, is because if you compare it, well, I didn't give you very precise megatrends we have identified, but I talked about very many factors, including values, including lifestyles, including well, I didn't mention that, but I should have, including role of the nature in human life. So these are the megatrends we identified there. And then when we are talking with entrepreneurs, these are very practical things. And you might say that, yeah, entrepreneurs are very practical and they are not concerned with soft issues, and this, well, you researchers do the soft issues, we, the entrepreneurs, will deal with very set and hard factors that affect our business. However, the interesting part of this particular slide that I'm showing here is that if we compare to where European Union, for example, sees what will affect food systems, we see quite tremendous difference how Latvian entrepreneurs see what will affect them, and then what experts from across Europe say what will affect food systems. And what I conclude from that is, first of all, it's very interesting, yeah. But secondly, and this is more importantly, that when we come to food systems, when we come to actors who are operating in food systems, most likely they are clearly not prepared for what the future will bring them. They are thinking about the factors that have affected them so far. They are thinking about very practical matters, but they don't see, and that's coming without any judgment. It's just that their daily routines somehow exclude those more broader issues that they will have to react in the maybe next 5 years, next 10 years. So basically, this leaves me with quite a few questions regarding how we can change that. And this is where my presentation almost ends. So basically, this leaves at least me with two broad questions. And one of them is regarding if we do acknowledge that entrepreneurs currently live in a little bit different perspective on what the future will bring from that is presented by European Union, by our study, then how do we align these two interpretations, or how do we communicate with entrepreneurs and with food sectors that basically the factors that will affect them are quite different from those that they are currently seeing? So this is one question I leave to you, and I hope that at some point we will have a possibility to discuss, and if not, then just a fruit for thought. And the second thing for me is that when I started to talk about future, I said one of the problems is that our daily lives and our experience in lives are becoming much more faster than they used to be. So the question is, how do we govern in a time when everything is becoming very fast? And I think our governance models, our governance of food system is very much developed for a system that is developing slowly. But our current issues are suggesting that we have to move forward much more in a quicker pace. And unfortunately, the way how we are trying to make decisions, how we react, how we monitor, is made for more this slower pace. So can we actually create a model that would allow us to move forward quicker? So with that being said, the only slides that doesn't have pictures. Sorry, I didn't know what to include here. I was really sitting by my computer and thought that I should have a picture here, but so yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much. It's interesting to see a sociologist present such complex material in 10 minutes. I think you did a fantastic job, and I'm sorry for putting that constraint on you. But I think it's a great summary to put the megatrends work into the context also of the discussion today, which is on food waste. We're going to get to questions later on. So I believe we'll be able to discuss some of the issues that you brought up towards the end, some of those larger questions that deserve a lot of reflection. So thank you. Now we're going to hear from Ineze Sisna from BIOR, and she's a researcher in food safety, animal health, and environmental research, and that's the institution FJOR, that's what it stands for, that she represents. And she's been there for more than 10 years. And she's also active in increasing the knowledge and qualification of nutritionists in Latvian Association of Diet and Nutritionists. And she's going to tell us more about some of the trends related to food consumption and food waste that formed during the pandemic, as well as some other insights that can make us all a little bit wiser. So the floor is yours, Ineze.
Thank you, Afton. Thank you for a nice introduction. So my view on this is not so much on food waste, because as Afton already introduced, we focus more on food consumption. And we rarely focus on the food waste. But within pandemic, we had a lot of questions which were interesting to be seen. And within the great events like this, you made the collaborations with other countries and other specialists in other countries to come up with the ideas to find the data which you probably need and probably are interested at. The question during the pandemic was that we were all in pretty unusual situation, and when we usually do the food consumption surveys, we have like certain methodology. We know what we need to do, how we need to do to get precise information. But during the pandemic, everything was put on hold, also the research. So basically, you have to change everything and have to find another approach how to get what you want. And we knew that there will be changes, but there were no easy instruments to see and to understand how we can gather that information. So in most of the countries, we knew that there are changes in the food purchasing. The homes has become our offices. People are scared of not getting enough food or handling the food. So a lot of information around it, and it was we were curious to see how that develops and how that will have an effect on what we eat and how much we eat and what do we waste as well. So we have had a great team, and also Heida is here, part of this. So in Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, we had and Iceland. Sorry, I mentioned Heida but forgot the country. We started with an idea that we want to find out what's the difference and how do we look in this region during the pandemic. And with the support from Nordic Council of Ministers, we had such an option. Of course, there were difficulties during the study, so it has some issues with the data, but there are still interesting data coming out of it. So the one issue was that we started the survey in a bit different time period, but as you know, with the pandemic, we had also a different situation in each country. So we were not at the same place, everybody at the same time. And that is one thing that you can see with the results of the study. So basically, it was an online questionnaire, which is all, we know that having an online questionnaire is a bit difficult. As you know, you can't reach all the parts of the population. But anyway, quite detailed data on shopping, eating behavior, changes in food consumption, and some other, leaving the place for the open answers to see what's really going on people's mind. So coming to the data. Overall, we had 2,600 valid answers from all of the countries, a bit more from Lithuania, but overall, it was covered in all Baltics and Iceland. When we look detailed, we have to take into account that the people who usually answer the questionnaires in online surveys are more highly educated and probably younger, probably more involved in the process. So that's has to be taken into account when looking at the data, definitely. But the thing that we know that's changed is that people have started to cook at home because there's no other choice. at some point. But when we look at previous data, we have heard from participants in other surveys that they want to cook at home, but they don't have a time for that. And the pandemic, as you see in the graph, people started to do that. They started to gain new skills and had to actually put a lot of work also in providing for the family. So the differences are here. There is a slight difference with Estonian data, as they have also data after the pandemic. So we can see that the cooking more than once a day at home is reducing. So it will be interesting to look at that at the longer time, how that affects us. Some research in Asia has already shown some ideas how people are going to keep some of the things they have learned through pandemic. Of course, there is also grocery shopping that's changed a lot, and it was interesting to see that in Baltics we do like to shop more often than in Iceland, and that was the main difference. Although, like when we look at the online shopping, there was not too much activity before pandemic, and of course online shopping came very trendy and very in much need during the pandemic. But yeah, somehow shopping is a thing we like to do. What is different in a shopping cart? So mostly it's food that you can store for a longer time. So everything is like mostly clear, and we understand why people do that. But when we look at the previous surveys, then we can see that before we didn't use so much canned food, and especially when we look at the canned meat, that wasn't the food on our menu, and also for the canned vegetables. And also the comfort food is one thing that comes into the shopping cart more often, as there should be something fun to do during the pandemic. I have to mention also the food supplements. In a way, well, it's not like cooking food or having a food waste from that, but it seems like we like to still believe in some bit of magic or some things that are making our lives easier or making us healthy by the easy way. So food supplements are part of the diet. Quite many people mentioned using it during this time, and some have been using very interesting food supplements for various reasons, but basically the health issue is a main one. So finally, to the one question we had about the food waste. We couldn't measure the difference in the food waste, so basically it was answered by participants. Have they noticed? Are there any changes? And most of them mentioned that there were no changes in the food waste. For some of them it increased or some decreased, but basically a lot of them do not keep track. So the feeling is it's the same, but there are other things people are more worried about than tracking how does it change. To conclude, after this we had people who understand that pandemic stopped them and learned to or encouraged to try new routines, new behavior, like shopping, planning, meal planning became a thing, although at the beginning it consumed a lot of time. But afterwards, those are the things people mentioned that they want to keep. And I think it goes together with what Inga mentioned at the beginning, that planning and thing is what we can encourage more. So maybe this time is helping in a way to do that. And also suggestions for food producers for participants were less packaging was the one thing that became very oftenly mentioned during this time, as everything became more packed in plastics. So in a way, that became a thing people started to talk about. So maybe the way how to notice it, maybe not the best way how to notice it, but at least the question was on the table. So yeah, that's about it. If you want to have more details in the research, it's available online now already. And if you have an idea and you want to look into data deeper, then please feel free to contact, and we can. There's still a lot of work we can do with that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ineze. That's really interesting to see the results of the survey. And I'd be very curious to also see how things have changed between now and when you actually had conducted the survey, because as we know, there have been lots of changes to our everyday lives since that time. Things have changed so quickly. So thank you again. We'll get to some of the questions in relation to some of the behavior changes that you were looking at. But I'm going to move to our final speaker before we get to the question and answers. And our final speaker, you've heard from her before, Alexandra Nijiska, and she's the project manager in Central and Eastern Europe for EIT Food. She's experienced in public policy as an analyst, and she's also researching a lot in her current position, but also in previous positions that she's held. She is leading EIT Food's Food Foresight Initiative, and she's coordinating empowering women in agri-food. And this is a project in Central and Eastern Europe. So Alexandra, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Afton. Hello, everyone. I'm really proud to be able to represent here today EIT Food. And EIT Food is actually the Europe's leading food initiative that is working to make the food system more sustainable, healthy and trusted. And today I'm here also representing our CLC Northeast office in Warsaw that covers the large scope of Europe, from the Nordics up to the Balkans. So I'm really happy that we can also join this regional initiative on the Baltics and Nordics. And through our mission is to boost innovation and to help to tackle biggest societal challenges that we have around the food, with, of course, a cooperation of our partners. And what is important, our partners come from both the industry as well as academia, research centers, and startups, in order to make sure that the innovations that we create are evidence-based, have the newest technology, but are also very attractive for consumers and will be relevant for the market. And this is why in our capacities we have also research activities, either done by us or by our partners, which we are very happy. And today I will tell you more about two of them. I wanted to maybe shed a bit light on the opportunities that we get from the pandemic situation that we have. And Inessa was so nicely explaining how the consumer behavior has changed at that time. I would like also to touch upon it, but later maybe show what we can really learn from the COVID-19 and how our future, that was also today mentioned by Michaelis, can be shaped in a positive way through this very disruptive situation. So what we did in EIT Food back in March 2020 was understanding that we need to first set the landscape of how the COVID-19 may impact agri-food sector in Central Eastern Europe, and later build on that with our programs and future scenarios. And as you may see here on this slide, these are a few data on how the agri-food sector changed throughout the April 2020 in comparison to April 2019. And actually, it's a rather positive picture, because the agri-food sector was really resilient in Baltics, especially. The food production dropped only by 13%, and the food retail sales only by 6%. But as you can imagine, also those data are not full, and they don't show the full picture. And the what is missing here especially is the HoReCa sector and the restaurants. And that will be also tackled in the next sections by the speakers on how the COVID-19 impacted HoReCa. But we have to take into account that this resilience of the agri-food was mostly connected with the first parts of the value chain, so the production and processing and the retail. But how actually also consumers reacted to COVID-19. We had a brilliant presentation just before, so I will very quickly tell about the research that was done by Aarhus University, our partner, leading this survey in 10 countries, European countries, including Sweden, Finland, and Poland, on 5,000 consumers. That was done in September 2020, so already after the first wave of pandemic. And what is positive here is that we can see that consumers are believing they will be more aware of what they buy, and that the cooking skills will matter more. But the most important part in terms of our conference today is that 44% of those consumers that responded believed that they reduced their food waste, and they will continue to do so in the future. And it's extremely important taking into account also the data presented in the first presentation, where the households obviously are key players in this whole movement towards reducing food waste. But getting back to our project that we launched in March 2020, the Food Foresight, we knew that to understand and set the scene, we have to use a different methodology than we usually do. And strategic foresight appeared to be the most suitable one at those very disruptive times. I'm sure you will also learn more about foresight also next presentations. So I will very quickly only tell that in our approach, we used the economic factors and public policy factors to create some future scenarios that I won't go through, because I really want to focus on a positive aspect, which is the opportunities. And in terms of the opportunities that we see for reducing food waste after COVID-19, or in the time of the COVID-19, because actually, Michaelis, I have also a very similar impression that we launched our report in October 2020, and yet we are now in October 2021, and still we're in the masks and really hoping for the better, healthy future. So I hope that we meet in October 2022 without any restrictions at all. But as for the opportunities, as said, in terms of the agriculture, we saw that consumers were in a much more direct contact with the producers, especially farmers. They were seeking for the local products, and the cooperation at the regional level was much higher. And this is actually a great lesson learned from the Baltics, because the so-called Baltic bubble, so creation of the single Baltic antivirus area, helped us to create stable fast lanes for essential goods such as food, which helped to reduce the food loss at the transportation. As for the food safety, this is something also important, and there are opportunities to increase that at the level of the food processing. An interesting case also from the Baltics was that at that time we could see boom for frozen and canned fish sales. And actually it was due to the fact that a great amount of fishes was demanded in other European countries, such as Germany or Italy. So the producers from the Baltics decided to increase the fish import from Sweden and Norway, process it into the can or frozen fishes, and then sell it later on. So this COVID-19 situation was also an opportunity for new distribution channels and new products to be sold. And last but not least, the opportunities to make more aware food purchasing decisions by the consumers. That was also touched upon in the previous presentations. There is this great opportunity for digitalization also in the sector, and I think that also is very much connected to HoReCa sector that is digitizing. So I believe we'll also discuss it, hopefully also during the Chef's Talks today. And last but not least, we have to remember that there are many other factors that are influencing our future, the future of our agri-food system. Not only COVID-19, this is very important, obviously, but also the European regulations, such as EU Green Deal, are addressing many elements that can further develop a more sustainable food system and also reduce the food waste. One of them is the EU Code of Conduct on Responsible Food Business and Marketing Practices. This is something that is currently developed by the EU, and I really encourage you to join the conversation on that, because there is also elements regarding HoReCa sector and how to make it more sustainable in the future. And I hope that I made you become more interested in our report, so that I just give you glimpses of what's inside. But please do follow us at eitfood.eu, and you can download the full report on Central Eastern Europe in English, but there's also 12 country reports covering Central Eastern Europe, including Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, both in English and in local languages. So I hope you'll enjoy the read. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexandra. That was, again, a very whirlwind tour of some fascinating studies that you've been doing. And I hope to get into some of the details a little bit more during our question time, which we're going to start now. So, dear audience, as you've heard, there are also lots of materials out there for you to use, to read, to reflect upon. So I believe that you will walk away today much more informed and with some great approaches to reducing and preventing food waste. So now I'm going to move to the questions that have come in, and what I'll do is I'll just kind of start with the speakers one by one, and we'll just make sure that everybody has a question, and then we'll repeat that again. So Inga, a question has come in for you, and the question is around the environmental impacts of food. So many of the food products that are being wasted right now have a very high environmental impact. So I believe in the shopping basket photo that you showed, there was, I think it was about 13% of meat. We also saw a fairly large amount of dairy products. A lot of these ingredients are also not produced in Europe and are coming from other places in the world that have environmental, maybe high environmental impacts. How do we address the negative climate impacts of out of season or not locally produced foods, or just foods that have inherent high environmental impacts? And how does that relate to food waste? So the question is for you, Inga.
Yes, actually, seasonality, it makes a lot of impact on our food waste as well. And all the unexpected situations together with that. And as I know, for example, the COVID pandemic that are with lockdowns and everything, this is another outer impact of our food waste and so on. Of course, we cannot calculate and we cannot be prepared. But what makes us to be prepared is to know what we want to cook tonight, tomorrow, and maybe the day after. And if we have those plans in mind, and if we have those recipes in mind, then we can follow our shopping lists, and we can buy things that we need. and be a little bit more patient than just running through the supermarket and filling our baskets with food. So this is kind of our daily behavior or daily discipline that is paying attention, not skipping through things, but paying attention what we speak about, what we do, how we shop, how we cook. And actually, it is a little bit connected with mindful living as well, that we do not take things for granted. We think about impacts. And of course, nobody has said that sustainable life and sustainable consumption, that they are easy things. Of course, they do require time, and they do require our dilemma solving. And of course, those dilemmas are very personal as well. My dilemmas cannot be your dilemmas, and my solutions that as well, they cannot be best solutions for anybody else. So we are explorers and discoverers ourselves, and creators of our recipes.
Thank you, Inga. Another question for Miguelis, and this is coming from, in relation to dark kitchens, ordering online, and food delivery. So these are high growth businesses, and we see them sprouting throughout Europe, especially if you think about in Poland, the Baltic countries, the Nordic region. I mean, we've seen huge growth in this area. Is it a good development for restaurant entrepreneurs when we're kind of looking forward to the future? And how might this development influence food waste as well as the future of food?
I hope it's on. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the short answer is I don't know, but a longer answer. Well, and I think that's an honest answer, because clearly we could speculate that it will generate profits on one side or will generate broader markets to sell their products on the other hand. So, but actually, I'm not sure where it will lead. Currently, we see that, at least as far as I know, that the strength of being a middleman between restaurants and consumers, it is centralizing in hands of a couple of distributors. And on one hand, and I haven't seen data on what it means for each restaurant, how large share from each of the meals they sell they have to allocate to this middleman. So I think at the end it comes down to the same questions we have in supply chain in general, how the contracts are basically put together and how the shares of income are distributed among the actors that are engaged in these transactions. And I think that the fact that we, after 50 years of studying contracts between the actors engaged in supply chains, that the fact that we still don't have concrete answers which are the best solutions actually couldn't be translated to this phenomenon as well. That probably it's, as just was said, it's more about trying to do our best rather than saying that it will automatically be good or bad thing. It's always about being mindful about the possible negative or positive outcomes. What concerns waste? Well, clearly I think in terms of packaging, there will be more waste because, well, each of the portions suddenly needs to be packaged. Also, when the waste is centralized in one place, like restaurant, you can easier deal with all the waste that is coming, that's there. If you start distribute this waste among households, then probably you require that households are mindful of that waste. And in Latvia, as we see, it's not the case. People are still quite not aware of what's happening with waste. So I would say that in terms of waste, probably we need more work to say that it could have positive impacts.
Thanks very much. It's again, yes, it's hard to speculate what will happen in the future, but I think you've managed to answer the question well. The next question is for Inez, and which of the consumption patterns that you are investigating are here to stay, and how might these influence either the increase of food waste or at least the prevention or even reduction of food waste?
This is not an easy question. Well, I started to work with the food consumption data over 10 years ago. And over these years, I thought that, okay, people are changing their behavior and changing what they are eating, but actually not. And that was a bit surprise for me. It's like when you go into the details, then you see the difference. Like you see some new things coming in, some things are out of our diet, some things are coming back. But when you group it in the food groups, you see actually the same things. It's not changing so much. So we are quite conservative on what we have decided. So I'm not really sure what is new coming in. So there are, new. Well, always like again, I'm coming back to the talk about the believing in magic. So we like to hear about superfoods and everything. So we are encouraged to try something that is probably having some power or some helping us in easy way, but it's not always staying. So it has to become as a our routine or easy thing to do. Otherwise it's not staying, and we are at the same food groups and same behavior with our food. On the other hand, I would say in Latvia we are in a pretty good situation as old recipes, grandma recipes are coming back, and we are like circulating the same food all over, just in the new tastes, new flavors, which is a nice thing, and I think that's an advantage in this region to still have that history and also using it in nowadays.
Thank you. And yes, it's not an easy question to answer. I hope some of those recipes that are recirculating again are also ones that would be more mindful of food waste and at least that's how we often romanticize our forefathers' generations, that they were just much more resourceful as we are. So the next question is to Alexandra, and achieving real impact in reducing food waste will require broad collaboration throughout the food chain. Beyond the willingness of individual restaurants, how can we reduce food waste across an entire city, country, or even Europe? Another big question. No easy questions today, I'm sorry.
No. If we had an answer to that, then we wouldn't be struggling so much with doing so. But I guess that the question itself shows one of the challenges, which is to coordinate so many different actors at once, because obviously at the whole value chain we have the problem of food waste and food loss, and then there are so many different actors at the city level, at the national level. I guess that one thing is what Inessa said is the individual actions and individual choices that the consumers need to do. But on the other hand, we have this top-down approach and the EU regulations that are coming in, as I said, that will require some changes at the bigger picture. And the farm to fork strategy is very much focused on reducing food waste, and it will also require some actions from the industry and from the restaurants. So I believe that communicating it well and having people on board and not seeing those new regulations as only the new EU requirements, but indeed a mean to achieve our common goal, which is to reduce food waste and make this impact, would be the key to have them successful.
Thank you very much. So let's go back to you, Inga. There was a definition question, so perhaps a little bit easier to answer. This was the question, what is post-consumption food waste? So one of the members of the audience just wanted a clarification what you meant by that.
Mm-hmm. This is food waste that occurs in the process of consumption or after. So mainly it is the food that has been left in our refrigerators or shelves not eaten, or maybe left in our pans or on plates that are not eaten. And so this is what we might consider as post-consumption food waste. because food waste occurs in each stage of food waste supply chain, and the food waste that is connected to our consumption. So it is the food waste that you mentioned.
Thanks, Inga, for the clarification. So back to you, Mikolas. This is really a more of a reflection question. So you, in the Megatrends report, there's kind of a mention of also different solutions that are coming up and that may play out more in the future. And some of those are high tech in nature, while others are nature-based or even lower tech in nature. So when it comes to how we address food waste, what kind of combination of these different solutions is going to work? Do we need to go fully towards nature-based solutions again, or is it high tech all the way, or something in between? What are your opinions on that?
Well, does it work? Well, yes, it works. Thanks. So again, I think the honest answer is, well, we don't know what the future looks like. But at least my belief is that probably we won't have just technology or just nature-based food systems or societies that is looking just to one direction for answers. Basically, what I honestly believe is that the future systems, if there is a one thing that describes them, that it is diversity. That basically we won't have just conventional food systems dominating. We will have very diverse supply chains that are being intertwined in very many ways. And basically, on the one hand, that will make our lives significantly harder because suddenly there is so many more issues that we need to address. On the other hand, we will constantly have these sort of safeguarding mechanisms where how we could resolve problems that emerge. And also, we will have broader knowledge of how different solutions actually solve the issues that we face. On the other hand, I think what needs to be mentioned here is that not all of the solutions serve the same purpose. So technologies, they can basically, on one hand, be used to reuse a product or waste that we have. On the other hand, they can be used to inform people about what's happening. So in the same way, nature, on one hand, we can discover a new way how intercropping may basically facilitate new protection measures for the crops that we have. On the other hand, by foraging, as I go in detail in the report, it can help to facilitate recognition that how nature works among consumers. So basically, I think that the question isn't so much what we will use, but rather how different aspects of food system will connect to the systems that we are trying to build that supports elimination of food waste. And in this regard, I think that basically almost everything that we have will be there just in different capacities. As I said, nature probably, we need it just to show people that nature is there and that it can work in various ways. And technologies probably will help us to close the gaps that we have and that we cannot close with any other means.
Thank you. Thanks very much for the reflection. So now, Ineza, well, back to you. Some companies, some food delivery companies have been arguing that preparing food at home is a waste of time and resources, and therefore we should be eating out more or actually ordering in food to be delivered to our households. So some have also argued that this is going to reduce food waste, while we don't need to go out and shop and basically be disorganized about our food planning, but we could just order things on demand from a restaurant. You have a background in nutrition, so what do you have to say about these kinds of claims? And is this the direction we want to be headed in?
Well, I think both systems could go along with that. So it's not like we can't have some fun, especially in times like this. So, and whatever people are trying to do to have a day a bit different. So that's why we have all that, I believe. So yeah, cooking at home is not the only approach, of course. But when we look at the data, then we see that there are some relation to people thinking more about food, so they are making more healthy choices when they do cook at home. So there's involvement of all that. So it's making a bigger picture. It also involves kids if the kids are at home. So that's like a big system building up there. But I don't believe that. There are now companies who are offering that you can buy food to make a specific recipe, which is a very interesting and I think interesting approach for those who are afraid to cook at home. So basically, you have somebody who's telling you and helping you with that, and maybe that's the way also how to encourage eating at home. But I don't think it's like just one or in another way. So it doesn't work for all of us the same way. It should be both and should be more experiences, but I don't think it's just the one way here and one answer here.
Thanks so much. As you've all addressed, it's not black and white necessarily, and because these are complex decisions that we need to acknowledge that there will be different solutions. So final question here before we shift to the next part of our program. The final question is towards Alexandra, and the question goes like this. Alexandra talks about consumer behavior change. At least to me, it seems that the behaviors in this period have been constantly shifting. They differ if in the beginning of the year and then at the end of the year or after the implementation of emergency situations have been considered. So what moment should we take to conceptualize the changes that need to be made? Can we actually make any claims about habits changes?
Yes, it's a very good question. Actually, first of all, we have to remember that these kind of studies are based on the declarations of the respondents. So this is the first, let's say, asterisk that we need to have, that we need to believe people on what they say, but obviously we are not there at their homes. There are, of course, those kind of studies, ethnographic studies, where we can observe how people are really consuming food and preparing it and eating, but it was not possible to be done during the pandemic time, as Inessa said. So here, this is something that we have to keep in mind, that these are only but also great that we have them, the declarations. And on the other hand, if we want really to understand the shift, we obviously would need to do the tracking exercise. So to come back to the same respondents throughout the months, and I'm sure those kind of studies are done right now in Europe to grasp this shift in the consumer behavior through COVID-19 and post-COVID-19, or in the time of COVID-19 actually still. So I guess we will be able to have more informative answers later within the next years. But I think that this trend of cooking at home and planning the purchasing is something that we can observe in our own lives. And we can also test those declarations that we have from the respondents with what we see around in our environment, in our families. And I believe that this is something that may stay with us for a longer time.
Thank you very much. So this ends this part of the conference on data and also foresight, but we're going to hear a little bit about the future as well in the next session. So in case that is of great interest to you, don't worry, we'll talk about it a little more. So thanks again to all of our speakers in the last session. Now we're going to move on. I want to turn to the topic of solutions. We're going to talk about particular innovations and good practices that are helping us to prevent and reduce food waste in this part of the world. So Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, and the Nordic region. We're also going to hear more about the future directions that we can take, as I said before. And I think that most people, when we're kind of thinking about solutions here, I think that most people they can agree with me that we've spent a lot of time on diagnosing the problem in collecting data. We tend to focus a lot of effort, and there's absolutely nothing wrong about that, because what I said before is that in order to understand where we need to intervene, we need the data. But we also need to understand what kind of efforts are taking place and how some of these can be scaled up and utilized not only by a single kind of actor in the food system, but also by many actors to make them kind of a normalized part of our food system. So that's what we're going to talk about now. And remember, for those of you who have joined somewhere into the program, so not at the very beginning, if you have any questions, please send an email to Maya Kalle, and her email address is Maya, MAIJA, @norden.lv, NORDEN.lv. So our first speaker in this session is, oh, I'm very sorry, I have a hard time with your name, but I think it's Maciej Jagachak, and apologies if I've mispronounced it, but you are, Maciej, you are a board member of the Polish Society for Future Studies, and you're also working for 4CF, which is a foresight company, and you're a foresight engineer. Your achievements include a number of foresight analyses concerning, among other things, the future of payments, 3D printing, artificial intelligence, metal, energy, food packaging, and photonics industries. So a lot of future relevant things. And I'm going to give you the floor to talk about what you know best, the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Afton. I'm here to present to you the results of the study that were ordered by one of our clients. It was the Federation of Polish Banks of Food, and they wanted to create, as a part of their several years project, it's called the PROM project, Development of the System for Monitoring and Reduction of Waste. They wanted to create a kind of a guidebook of future solutions, that could make possible reducing the food waste in Poland. So there were two main goals of this study. First was to assess what is the possible level of future food waste in Poland, and what is the possible amount that it could be reduced to. And also after that, we went through solutions trying to find the best one, the most suitable one, or the most successful ones for different actors in the whole value chain. So, does it work? Oh, okay. Yeah, okay, right. So, we were conducting this study using the Delphi method. It's a kind of a panel expert where a group of, in our case, 10 experts that with a background in the food sciences and food waste management, also in restaurants and food production, discuss the possibilities or the different hypotheses about the future, and try to get to consensus about specific measurements, quantitative or qualitative. What's important about Delphi method is that all the experts are anonymous during the study, so there is no authority bias during that, and they can always reassess their evaluation after reading comments. They are often we always want them to explain why they are giving those assessments, those evaluations, and encourage them to get into discussion. So this consensus is as discussed as it's possible. So we needed to have in the first part some kind of hypothesis concerning the food wasted in Poland in the future, in 2030. We based this hypothesis, the number, upon two documents. The first one was a study made by during the consortium of the PROM project, which evaluated that in 2020 the level of food waste in Poland was around 4.5 million tons. And the second one was the European Parliament resolution that called partner countries to engage in activities that will reduce food waste to up to 50% of the level of the food waste from 2014. For Poland, it would be around 2.5 million tons. Reduction to 2.5 million. So what we did, the first number, we asked our experts, what is the probability that by 2030 in Poland there will be less than 3.75 million tons of food wasted. This is the reduction of 30% of wasted food. The answer was 71%, which is rather high. This is an optimistic one. The second is what was the probability that by 2030 in Poland there will be less than 2.5 million tons of food wasted, which is the goal set by European Parliament. And here we have a rather pessimistic view that it is less than 23% possibility that we will achieve that. Which is not so good, yeah. Also, we were asked to try to assess the gap between the probable and wanted level, a possible level of food waste in Poland by 2030. So that would act as a basis for later assessing the different solutions to food waste problem. And so this gap was assessed at 1.2 million tons. So there is still a lot of things to do, but due to some maybe lack of faith or lack of actions, experts said that probably it is possible to achieve the high level of reduction, but it probably will not be achieved. This is how the results of the first round looked like. The blue columns are the levels in millions of tons, of thousands of tons, that are possible probable to achieve in 2030, and orange ones are the results that are forecasted of the possible to achieve. And the red columns is the difference in percentage between those two values. As you can see, the highest difference is in production, almost 37%. So the production sector has a greatest amount of this difference, of this possibility to reduce. But as all other studies shown, the greatest amount of food wasted is in the households in the last link of the value chain. This is a specific contribution of each link in the value chain to food waste in 2030. So as you can see, households were assessed as participating in 37%. Then the second are production, food processing, gastronomy. And this is the lowest possible level. And this is a forecasted level. So those levels pretty much do not differ. So each of the links has its own things to do. And this ended up the first round. And after the first round, we created another Delphi survey, which was focused on solutions. So here's just the matrix and how we assessed. I will discuss how we assessed those solutions. We wanted our experts to assess. We created a set of solutions of 16 solutions, and we wanted our experts to assess 17 actually how those solutions what is the earliest time to the mainstream that this solution may be may be provided. And the second one was the percentage of food waste that this solution will bring to the table. We also have those circles around the orange dots. Their color says about the financial needs of each of those solutions. The lighter ones are less financially costly than the darker ones. So each of those solutions was assessed in a quantitative way by our experts, and after discussing those solutions, we could have our guidebook. The most important thing is that between the first and the second round of this study, there was a big discussion between our experts, which were presenting academia and professionals and the business side, about the definition of the food waste. Because there were some solutions that we wanted to introduce that would, for example, use wasted food as a fuel to fuel biogas electric plants, for example. But then there was a strong sentiment that per definition the food wasted is the food that is not eaten by people. So even if we use it in some other way, then we should count it as a waste. So by such choice, we limited ourselves only to solutions that directly want to limit this waste on post-consumer waste. And we, of course, don't have time to go through all of those solutions. I will focus only on one category, because what we wanted to do, we also asked all our experts to try to say which link of the value chain is responsible for introducing this solution, and which link of the value chain will this solution influence the most. So this is two categories. As we saw earlier, the biggest part of the cake is in the households. So here is the top 5 solutions for the households that could help ourselves in reducing food waste. But as you can see, it is not only consumers that are responsible here for introducing those solutions. So, for example, we have a suggestion to implement technological solutions for monitoring the shelf life of products, sharing shopping lists or recipes to the masses, for example, using QR codes, which is, of course, a thing to do for food producers, not for consumers. Second one, we have strengthened the importance of community-based organizations by improving their efficiency and networking for the management of unsold food. Suggest or sell appropriate weights portions to the consumer, another one to food producers. Implement education on reducing food waste. This is the regulatory or governmental one. And raise awareness of solutions to reduce food waste through public campaigns. These were the top ones that directly influence households, but are not all, I think even none of them is for consumers to introduce. Yeah. So this is the top 5. And that's pretty much it. If you would like to see some further details and all the other solutions, then I strongly encourage you to go to projectprompt.pl. And that's it.
Thank you very much, Maciej. Very interesting, and we'll have some follow-up questions, I think, to go a little bit deeper into those interesting insights that you shared with us. So next up, we're going to hear from Ewa Ryżowska and Katarzyna Młynarczyk, and they're going to present some of the results of some research that they've done into restaurants of the future. So Ewa is the project manager at EIT Food, and she's responsible for communication and international activities and events and she has extensive experience in food business. And you've already heard from her earlier, but now she's going to talk a little bit more about this particular research. And she's presenting together with Katarzyna. And Katarzyna is a manager at EIT Food Central and Eastern Europe. And she's a serial entrepreneur and a leader running projects in a co-creative way in cooperation with partners in 4 different companies so far. So I'll hand it over to the 2 of you to run the show. Thanks.
Thank you, Afton. Thank you, Afton. Just I would like to say that, of course, at EIT Food, we loved to have Katarzyna as our product manager, but she's not. She's one of the participants of the project that I will say a few words about and make some kind of introduction for her. So I will give her floor later. Right now, I just wanted to say that I'm really happy to be here and have this opportunity to show you a few insights and conclusions from our project that we are conducting in Poland, which is Direction Restaurant of the Future. And it's aimed to support HoReCa sector in supplementation of the sustainable practices in this disruptive time. So as Alexandra showed earlier, our food foresight on the impact of COVID-19 on agri-food sector showed that HoReCa sector proved to be the most heavily negatively impacted by the pandemic and face multiple challenges due to lockdowns. Restaurateurs often struggle to survive, and they have to change their working modes completely, from the way that they serve meals, switch to the delivery, how they manage the staff, and work with suppliers, and of course communicate with their customers. For example, in Poland, plus 20,000 of food services establishments may have closed during the pandemic, and even 200,000 of people lost their jobs in the branch or had to change the industry. And the whole value of the market in Poland fell by more than 30% year to year. We are experiencing, obviously, not only in Poland, ongoing changes due to the pandemic and also the climate change. We shifted to even more fragile, unstable and unpredictable reality, which defines the context in which food services companies will exist. And as Alexandra mentioned earlier, additionally, food services will have to meet numerous legal requirements concerning greater sustainability. And also expectations of consumers are changing too. So HoReCa is undergoing a major shift. And we decided to conduct the projects to support the sector. So we started from the very beginning a scoping workshop to cooperate with the representatives of the sector to make it bottom-up project. So after scoping workshop, we proceed with the qualitative research and interviews, also the desk research, which was a base for the co-creative work for the sector representatives, and Kasia is one of them, and also Jakub Malec, that you will have a chance to hear during the chef's talks, is another one. And they worked on the sustainable and responsible practices for the sector. Now we are in the middle of creating the report and document from all of this project. So now I would like to briefly tell you about some insights from the research part and from the interviews part that we managed to identify. So changing the mindset proves the most difficult, and the attitude of the people in the industry often blocks change. What does it mean? It means that the restaurateurs and also the chefs and mostly staff that works a long time in the sector, they think that they know everything about their work, about their business, as they have to decide about a lot of stuff for example, restaurateurs from the total decor, the character of the menu, how to manage staff, how to work with the suppliers. So they tend to be a little bit reluctant to get a new knowledge or to look for it. But also, on the other hand, if they have some know-how or experiences that help them to survive, or they have some knowledge, they don't want to also share it so much as they treat it as some kind of secret. So exchange of professional knowledge and experience is not so common. And also chefs and restaurateurs outside of their workplace don't have this really active and effective community to exchange their professional experience, also when it comes to sustainable practices. Pandemic proved that these restaurateurs who tend to be flexible, quick and effective, open for new solutions and adapting them during the pandemic survived. And they are also more open in general for implementation new solutions. But they need to, they must take into account that introducing new solutions, also, for example, connected with reducing food waste or more sustainable other practices, requires a lot of time, extra time, and educational activities for the staff, as the people's attitude and awareness change slowly. Especially that it seems that the biggest challenge that the whole sector is facing right now, especially in the pandemic time, is the lack of workforce and lack of the professionalists on the market. As the food service jobs are not seen as a professional career, and of course, work in the HoReCa sector, despite the position, requires a lot of strength. It's also connected very often with a lot of pressure, stress. Not always is profitable or well paid, but at the same time, it can give a lot of self-fulfillment and satisfaction, and offers a lot of different paths of development. And here you can see one of the quotes from the Jolanta Rukowlaniec, who is the owner of one of the restaurants in Wrocław and also took part in the project, which I can say clearly illustrates very good the image that in general work in the HoReCa sector is present in Poland right now. So I would say the whole industry needs some kind of professionalization in terms to become more attractive career choice. So proceeding to the insights more connected with actual good practices, like conscious menu creation based on the local seasonal products, or reducing food waste, or in general waste management. Of course, conscious restaurateurs that we spoke with understand that maximizing the food, like the use of the food products, means not only minimalization of the food costs, but also reducing waste disposal costs. And of course, the environmental aspect is also gaining in importance. Supply chain organization, management from the central kitchens, storage, processing, appropriate portion sizes, and also advising guests on how much food they should order, that they don't order too much. Using leftovers are all the actions taken by conscious chefs and conscious restaurant staff. However, what appeared from the research, even in that cases, there is a strong belief that the food products could be used better, and there is still a place for the improvement, but there is a lack of concrete information on the solutions, or lack of easily accessible, comprehensive information about practical actions that could support that. Additionally, it seems that even though that a lot of chefs understand the needs and would like to include local rare products in their menus, the cooperation with local producers is not so easy and it's quite demanding. As smaller producer have often problems with liquidity of supplies. Oftentimes they don't deliver to the buyers and they have to collect their orders by themselves, which gets whole supply process more complicated. On the other hand, in general, if we're talking about the cooperation with the suppliers, it's connected with the huge amount of plastic or food packaging waste, which of course prevents the food from loss, and it's necessary because of the sanitary requirements, but at the same time, the restaurateurs are those who need to cope with it. Last but not least, how to reduce the food waste if we and see the benefits of reduction this food waste if we don't know exactly how we are wasting the food and how much we are wasting. So, of course, as Afton said before, what gets measured gets managed, and use of the information technology could help in that, but we could see from the interviews that it's still not clear for the restaurateurs or for chefs that they could use and they would need to introduce these new technologies. Of course, for example, Jakub Malec, who will talk in the Chef's Talks part, worked with Reno, one of these solutions that could help with tracking the waste, food waste in the establishment. The other one is, for example, Orbisk, which is EIT Food Rising Foodsters. So there are the solutions, but I think this mental change is needed to start to use them or encouragement. So those were some of the insights gathered during our research. Now I would like to give the floor to Katarzyna, who is the restaurateur, bakery owner, and co-founder of this startup, Less Waste startup, Rebread, and also one of the participants of the project who identified during their work the list of sustainable practices. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. I would say something about me, but very quickly. But there was one really important keyword that there is a startup here, which mission is to make waste more sexy, we can say, to make it more good taste. And it's about the bread, which, as mentioned today, is one of the most wasted elements of the food chain. I'm a co-owner of the Rebread project. Also, I'm a restaurateur. I have a couple of restaurants in Krakow on the main brand Handelek and the artisan bakery. That's why the challenge about the bread waste, it's my challenge also and my problem as other restaurateurs, other bakeries, and the food chain, I think. So until now, we saved a part of a bread, which is a couple of tons, by turning it into a valuable product, because it's really important to prevent it from the getting off of the cycle and make it circular. That bread is so valuable that we should make more valuable products from that. But let's make the couple of key insights and solutions from the workshop, because this is really important that we shared and exchange our knowledge. And I think that 3 keywords are here very important for all of the 4 solutions. Exchange of knowledge, but also exchange of resources. The other one is community and network. we can say that this is really important as a fundament of all of the solutions. And the third one will be, I think, more excitement in that, because we are, of course, during this disruption, we are really in gastronomy, we are not so optimistic, but we should think about the good things in that we have a chance to make more valuable and missionary projects for now on, because we are focusing more on the problems and challenges. So this is the time that we can even think optimistic about. So the first thing, a daily break to share a team meal. Of course, I know that in many restaurants there is something as a team meal, or employees are going off of the restaurant to have a quick meal, but let's make it more not wasting our resources. So, for example, if we used eggs or bread the most in our restaurant, let's make a team meal with a chef and the employees through the waste about that. So this is something that we can do every day or a couple of days of the week, but let's start with one product which is the most used in our restaurant. This can be a really quick solution, but it can also have an influence in the culture, because this is really important. It's not only about the food. It's also about the culture that we will build in our restaurants, in the future thinking. So the culture here will be another big keyword that I want to share it with you. The second thing is education. So about the awareness, but about the producing and reducing food waste with different practices. This is also about the culture, but let's think also about building networks between different actors. That this word actor was used by Alexandra, but this is also a word that I'm using during making a strategical things about linking some producers, restaurateurs, employees, teams in one network, because we all fight not only for food waste, but we fight for solutions and making it more open to the problems and challenges. And I spoke about making waste more sexy, because when we think about the waste, we see maybe not so positive or optimistic things. Today I was one of the members of the masterclass about the food waste, and we saw in a waste, we saw something which is really exciting, and it can be a good taste. So when you have your own restaurants or you have your own project, let's think about one thing that can be really a part of a menu, in a starter, in a main course, in a dessert, in maybe something that it's for the guests for getting off, and let's make in a menu one option in all of the parts, which is food waste, but making it less waste and zero waste. It's possible, really. We have it in our restaurant, and I know that it's more about the mission for our guests, not only about really eating a great product, still a great product, sometimes even more exciting than the normal products. And last one, which is really the most challenging, is being more open-minded when it comes to cooperation with competition. Yeah, for example, if our bakery or restaurant has the menu or the offer, I know that we cannot do everything the best when it comes to well-done offer. When the other bakery has the better pastries, for example, let's concentrate on the bread. let's concentrate on each element of our offer, but the best one, the best for our customers, the best for our clients, and the best for us when it comes to reducing also some of the waste, which is not only a food, but money, time, and everything that we can think about optimizing. So let's have the money, or let's have the offer that is best for us, and cooperate in a network with other producers, other restaurateurs, other people, but to make the most ideal offer for our guests and for our also for the world, to make it less waste. And that was all about the solutions. And the last thing is a summary.
Yeah, just wanted to add, as I said in the beginning, that we are still working on the final summary of the works, so it will be available to download also in English from our website. So yes, I'm encouraging you to check out it in November. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Erwan and Katarzyna. I know that Katarzyna has to leave, so if I may ask just one question before you leave. And the question is that there's lots of good examples of good practices that you showed to us. But as you said, many of these things aren't happening on a large scale, and they're not happening broadly. They're either ideas or something that's being implemented in one particular place right now. So how do we actually scale these efforts up to make sure that this just becomes a normal practice and implemented into everyday operations in the HoReCa sector? What would that take to get to that place? Yeah.
Okay. I think they are all, yeah, okay. So when it comes to the start, I think the starting point should be creating a community. So the community can be also digital, online, which is more suitable for these times, and creating a community around different countries, but also trying to make regulations, some kind of a manifesto that we can personalize when it comes to different countries, different needs, and also some limitations, I think, because we all here are like having a different situation, I think, but fundamentally we should have a network community around that. I think that it's still a niche when it comes to this topic of the conference, and communities or organizations which concentrate on linking entrepreneurs, restaurateurs, chefs, and people from this part of network. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Katarzyna. We're going to move to our next speaker, and that is Maria Abrahamsen, and she's from Robin Stubb. Together with her colleague Irina Bothman, she's promoting waste-free methods and mindsets, both from the theoretical and practical perspectives, and to empower individuals as well as enterprises and professionals to play their role in reducing food waste and fighting against climate change. So the floor is yours, Maria. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind introduction, and thank you for having us. We're really, really pleased to have an opportunity to speak here today in live from Riga. Yes, well, I am here to talk about how Robin Stubb approaches fighting food waste. So I have called our presentation today, Fighting Food Waste from Farm to Table, the Robin Stubb Journey. Let's just see. But first of all, what is Robin Stubb? Because it is very difficult to read out of the name that we're having unless you're Danish. We are a small Danish enterprise. We were founded back in 2013. Back then, we started a restaurant where we, for 3 years, every day, apart from Sundays, created new fresh menus based on surplus food. Surplus food being food from the industry that would have been wasted otherwise. 3 years down the line, we decided to shut down the restaurant to continue working with the same agenda, but more preventive. So we went out and worked like we do today, where we work with education and activism. And generally, we work with motivating people, individuals, or enterprises to fight their own food waste. That is what we are. This is who we are. We are only 2 people. And to avoid confusion, I have decided to put on the same outfit that I have in the picture. So it is the right person behind the mask. We are Irina, my business partner, and myself. We are basically Råb and Stop. Irina is the chef. I know it says that I'm the chef. I'm not. I have a different educational background. We do everything in Råb and Stop. Sometimes we would hire a staffer here or there if we are very busy, but when you hire Råb and Stop to fight some food waste for you, you are hiring the 2 of us. So, our motivation, I will not go deep into data because we have definitely heard data insights from people who really know data, but we can of course read the data and say that this is what is our motivation. We've had this enormous amounts mentioned earlier on today, but we hear numbers such as 931 million tons of food that is wasted every year. Now we are globally, it's not just within Europe that I'm talking now. It's the equivalent of the weight of 133,000 Eiffel Towers, 30 tons of food waste per second. If you know math, maybe you could calculate how much have been wasted just since I started speaking. It's a lot. I don't know math that well. One thing that is really a motivation to us is that we know that 61 of all this wasted food come from household, as we have also heard about earlier on today, because this is where we can actually do something, and this is also where we can see that each individual has a responsibility with this issue. These are the facts, but we also know that this is a strain on resources, it's damaging to the climate, and more importantly, that it is everybody's responsibility. So we can all do something, and this is what gets us up in the morning. So, how do we actually work? We do a lot of different things. We try to put it into these 3 different categories. We like to educate. We like to, throughout, no matter what we do, inspire and motivate. And then we also work a little bit more with activism, meaning we actually go do something. Maybe that's not that exact activity that will fight food waste globally, but we do something right here, right now for that specific potential food waste that would have happened. I will come with some specific examples underneath these categories. As mentioned, initially we more or less work with food waste reduction from farm to table in all of the chains. And example 1 is how we have been working with the primary production. We have done a few gleaning events. Gleaning, if you don't know, that is the activity of going into a harvested field to harvest the unharvested crops, so to speak. Because always when you do harvest, then there will be something that is left behind due to size or aesthetics, overproduction, and that is just left in the ground. Or on the fields. We have invited students or some of our volunteers who had worked with Råb and Stop, our staff. We have invited them in cooperation with certain farms to do these gleaning events. We're doing this to create an awareness of these unharvested crops, but also to inspire the farmers who were inviting us into their fields to maybe think more creatively about the unharvested crops that are left behind. And this is also an example of how we work more activistic about it, and we know that when we go into that field and we harvest those unharvested crops, it's not going to change the 931 million tons that we talked about before, but maybe we can start some people thinking about it. Maybe we can start some thoughts with the farmer. So that is the reason why we're doing this. Then we're also working with the chain retail and distribution. And the example that I brought here is something that we have called the Food Waste Project. Great name. This is every year when there is festivals back in the days, hopefully soon again. We have teamed up with Roskilde Festival, which is Northern Europe's largest festival. Every year, pre-pandemic, post-pandemic again, hopefully, there is around 120,000 participants at this festival being there for a full week. That is all fun, but they also eat and drink. That means there is also a lot of surplus after a festival like that. So what we do with a handful of partners is that we actually, after the festival ends, we collect and we register all the surplus food from this festival. And that is a lot of surplus food. It is between 20 and 25 tons that we have to collect in one day, 1 to 2 days. Then what we're doing is that we register all of it so we know what food is wasted or what food do we prevent from being wasted. Then we process some of the perishable surplus food because some of the food that we're collecting has a short expiry date. That's especially when we talk about milk from the festival. We process that, and then all the both unprocessed and processed food that we have dealt with, we are donating, distributing to social organizations. The perishable foods that we have done, if I remember correctly, I think it's last time we did a festival, it was 2 tons of bechamel sauce because there was so much milk that would have been wasted otherwise. And we're very proud of this project because the way that we handle all the surplus food from the festival means that social organization actually, they get food from the festival. This is happening in early July, all through into November, because we can handle the food in a way, storage in a way, so that the people that need it can actually enjoy it for such a long time. Then we are also working with food hospitality, where we're teaching trained chefs, but also not trained chefs, chefs to be. We teach these zero waste methods and concepts that we have also dealt with today in the masterclass earlier on. And we're doing this to create awareness of food as a resource. What we also work a lot with when we're doing these masterclasses or educating trained chefs already is not to tell them how to cook, because they of all know that. So we're talking a lot about motivations. Why should we reduce food waste? And there can be a lot of different reasons as to why you as a chef or a restaurant owner would want to do that. To some, they have a very green profile. They want to play a role in fighting the climate change. To some, it can be a financial relief to not have food waste because it is costly to waste food. But what we oftentimes also meet is there is a professional pride when these trained chefs actually realize that they can reduce their own food waste out of respect for the food that they're dealing with. So it is definitely more so an education in motivation rather than how to cook, because they know that already very well. Then we are also working with the households, and that is also very much in relation to education. We do food waste workshops, a little bit like the masterclass we did earlier on today, where we share knowledge and then inspiration and motivation. But when we're dealing with household, then it can also be a little bit more educating into how to cook with different methods. And then we do food events with a message, and we do that small scale and large scale. Last night we did a dinner here in Riga. We were around 25 people, where we cook with a zero waste methods and concepts. Back in Denmark, when we do it, then we would sometimes also include surplus food, just as examples of food waste that is happening out there. And then we always tell the stories of our methods and the surplus food we might have been cooking with. I mentioned 25 people yesterday, but we have also done all the way up to 2,000 people eating a 7-course meal based on surplus food. So we want to say we do it both in small and large scale, but the concept is the same. We want people to have a good time, have a good meal, but we also want them to get some inspiration and knowledge, so it also becomes food for thought and not just food for nutrition. So that is how we in Råbenstrup try to fight food waste from farm to table. Based on the numbers we've seen today, we believe that we will still be in this position for a few years ahead. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Maria, for talking about Råbenstrup. And we'll get to some of the questions that are coming in for you. But next, we're going to hear from our final speaker, and this is Renata Barajas. Sorry for the mispronunciation of your name. I have some difficult last names to present today, at least difficult for me. But Renata is a mechanical engineer turned food waste expert. She's also the CEO and one of the co-founders of Green Bites. And Green Bites is a startup, a green tech startup that helps food retailers reduce food waste through the use of AI. So I'll hand the floor over to you, Renata. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Afton. Let me just share my screen. Okay. Can you all see that? Cool.
Yes.
Awesome, yes. So thank you very much for having me, and I'm really excited to be speaking at the Great Taste Zero Waste event. It sounds really, really exciting, and I've really enjoyed the presentations thus far. I'll be talking a little bit about the role of technology in food waste reduction, and more specifically, I'll be telling you a little bit more about Green Bites, what we do, and how we hope to contribute to fighting the food waste problem. So growing food means a lot of things. It means powering farm equipment, clearing land to grow crops. It means using water and fertilizer to grow food. It means using plastic and packaging to package the food. It means using electricity to store the food. It means using planes and trucks and boats to transport the food. And if the food that we produced ends up in the garbage, all of these resources and subsequent emissions were for nothing. So obviously that's why we're all here today, so that we can find different aspects on how we can make this problem a little bit smaller. And I won't go too much into the connection between food waste and the planet, because we've heard so many good things about great correlations about how those play together. And just kind of going through the process of the food system and studying the food waste problem as a whole, it becomes super daunting. And the problem itself is pretty abstract. And from a technological perspective, or from any perspective, to start to be able to tackle this kind of large-scale endemic issue is really important to break it down and have many, many players working together in their areas, and then cross communications to fight this bigger picture. And there are technical solutions at every single stage of the food supply chain working towards reducing food waste. And hopefully we'll continue to see even more solutions emerge, and more of these solutions working together for this big picture solution that we're hoping for. Some of examples are, there are sensors being used at the food production stage to optimize production. There are solutions looking to monitor and ensure ideal storage conditions during the transport of food. There are solutions like Green Bites working to reduce waste at retailers. And there are solutions that work to mitigate food waste that has already been produced after all of these processes. In the case of Green Bites, we kept chopping up the food waste problem until it felt tangible for us and until we related it to the problem itself. And we looked at why food waste was occurring in restaurants and other food retailers because of our team's connection to this specific part of the food industry. And after extensive research, both literature and quantitative throughout researching and interviewing many, many restaurants, we found that the food waste problem in restaurants and food retailers happened due to over-ordering and over-serving food. And specifically, we focus on the over-ordering aspect. Now, why does over-ordering happen so commonly? And that happens because ordering the right amount of food is confusing, it's time-consuming, and very few people at the food retailer are equipped with the know-how to make these decisions, but sometimes they're not available, which is where GreenBites comes in. GreenBites is a cloud-based solution for food retailers to save money and reduce waste. Very, very basically, we tell retailers how much food they should be ordering. And to do this, we developed a progressive web application that breaks down menus, tracks inventory, and predicts future food consumption using machine learning algorithms. We use artificial intelligence that inputs past sales, weather data, and holidays to predict future sales. Once we predict future sales of how much of each raw ingredient the restaurant should order in the upcoming days, if the restaurant agrees with our suggestion, they can approve the order, and the GreenBites app will automatically send out the order to all of the distributors at one time. Very, very, very briefly, our machine learning models run on TensorFlow, and they were deployed onto the Google Cloud platform using a Docker image, and the front end is a React application with a backend in Firebase. We are currently conducting paid pilots of our solution in 18 restaurant locations in Iceland. And I have to show off my team very briefly, because I'm just so proud of them. We have backgrounds in science, engineering, forecasting, marketing, sales, and computer science. Along with our strong technical backgrounds, we have over a decade's worth of experience in the food service industry. We have a really tangible understanding of the food waste problem and have personally all thrown away lots and lots of food at restaurants and other food retailers. And besides that, our technical know-how gives us the ability to start solving this problem. And apart from our experience, we're very resourceful and thrive in chaos and embrace new challenges with curiosity. We've done some studies, and our data suggests that GreenBites can reduce 250 kilos of food waste in a small restaurant per month. And this was calculated using sales and order data from a local restaurant during testing. And this is when we realized that quantifying food waste is not necessarily straightforward. It's when we began to dig into the different definitions of food waste and looking for different methodologies for quantifying food waste and seeing that there's data methodologies and weighted methodologies. And we just kind of wanted to streamline this process because not a lot of restaurants have the time or the resources to be investing time and energy to tracking their food waste in a way that is useful for them. And as legislation suggests, like it's going to become more and more important for different retailers to understand their sustainable impact. So the way that GreenBites calculates food waste is by looking at what was supposed to be ordered and what was ordered and calculating based on the data and kind of streamlining this process in a way that doesn't require too much intervention from the restaurant themselves. And I want to touch on something that was mentioned a couple of presentations ago. I believe it was Eva that mentioned that sustainable behavior change is required for food retailers, but there is this resistance. There is this culture of knowing how they do things and having a status quo and sticking to the status quo. And I do believe that that is absolutely correct. It is important to change the way we perceive our day-to-day interactions and actions and start to build a culture where it revolves around sustainability. but there's also a lot of literature on the failure of trying to drive sustainable behavior change from one thing to another. And instead of kind of like flipping a switch, Green Bites is focusing on introducing incremental change that taps into the user needs as it stands now and creating a solution that is focused on the way that the user, how restaurant chefs, how they take inventory. Can they do something can we use the app in the restaurant? Can we use it in the back? Can we do it in a way that is comfortable to use? Like, do I have to take off my gloves? Like, how do we tap into what is happening now and start to build these habits and show that there is a connection between what is already being done and what we want to do? So yes, we focused on creating this user-focused solution all the way from design and to making it really, really easy for non-experts and testing and retesting with many different types of chefs and restaurant managers. And tracking and reducing food waste has a huge potential for reducing greenhouse gases, land usage, water usage, biodiversity loss, and even hunger, which is why our next step is to expand to grocery stores, as well as geographically from Iceland into other parts of Europe. And the Green Bites vision, again, I think this came up in one of the questions throughout the panel. Green Bites has a vision of playing a role in optimizing the entire food supply chain. High market acquisition in a geographic area means that Green Bites can begin to identify and analyze food consumption trends on a deeper level. And in order for us to reimagine and optimize the food supply chain in a way that revolves around sustainability, we believe that it is crucial for governments, importers, and farmers to understand the trends that Green Bites will have access to, which is really exciting and some long-term vision. And I think this also stems from a place of community, communication, and building a network of food waste stakeholders that all have a similar goal. And just very briefly, if you have any questions or want to reach out or try out the app, there's a lot of free features that you can use for organization. Check out the website, greenbites.is. We are done with food waste, and I am sure you are too. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Renata. Fantastic to see another startup represented at today's conference and another very tangible solution being developed. So best of luck to you as well. I know it's a tough business to be in, and when you have, when you're working with a startup, but it's really impressive what you've accomplished so far. So now we're going to move into questions. We're a little bit behind in our time schedule, but I think that's all right. What I'm going to do is just choose a selection of the questions. I think we'll just have one round. So let's start with Maciej. And one of the questions that has come in for you is about consumers. So consumers are always told that they are the ones that need to change. How do we recognize that a consumer's capacity to engage with the various issues that we've talked about today is relatively limited? How realistic is it to ask consumers to be the main actor facilitating food waste related change? Maciej, I'll allow you to answer that very
It's a great question, and this is the thing that came out of our study, actually, that a lot of things that challenge consumers have to come from other links of the food chain. So, for example, the producers. Consumers want to buy different sizes of portions of food, but they are not available for them, for example. So it's up to the producers to make them do that. Also, the question that appeared in my mind when I was listening to earlier presentations was when we saw the results of a study concerning how the eating habits and preparing food habits changed during the pandemic. And my question was, why people started to cook more? Of course, there's answer because they had to, but they had to sacrifice some of their activities, some of their time they were using for preparing food. So what was that activities that were sacrificed? Was it working from? We all know how it goes when you work on home office, right? Was it your relaxed time? Was it sleeping? What was that? Was it time saved on making groceries because you ordered online? This is a great question because we all know that that preparing food and also preparing it in a sustainable way, limiting the waste, requires time, requires thinking, requires planning ahead, and this is tough. This is tough to do. So if it gets easier and easier for the consumers, it will become more attractive for them. You don't have to push people to do something, but you just have to make it available for them, not make it too hard, because there is no real award for doing stuff that you can do easily, doing the hard way. You just have to understand that, and people won't do that. So I think this is the point that people need to understand in the other links of the food chain. And this is also something that Renata said, that there is this strong sentiment in restaurants, right? Not to engage in food waste. And what Green Bites is trying to do is to show them that we can show you how it is in your mindset. You are saving money, so food waste is also reducing food waste is good for you. So that's the way to trick this psychological barrier. At least that's what I think.
Thank you very much. That actually reminds me, just a little anecdote here, that reminds me of an interesting piece in The Economist magazine that basically assessed that if a New York lawyer, if you were actually to put a price on the loaf of bread that they were baking during the lockdown, it might be about $700 per loaf. So there are some reasons why we kind of allocate certain tasks to other parts of the sector. So why we do have specialization. But that's just a small anecdote. I want to now move to Eva. And the question is really around professionals in the HoReCa sector. As you showed, they have to juggle so much on a day-to-day basis. It's a very stressful job. Would technology like Green Bites, for example, help to improve that situation and reduce the amount of stress placed on chefs? I know EIT Food is working so much with supporting innovators. So just love to hear a little bit more about what kinds of technological solutions we might see coming up.
Thank you. As I said, I believe that, and Renata also highlighted it nicely, that this all technological solutions could be a good friend of the restaurateurs and chefs, and maybe just they don't see it coming, but while showing the benefits of it and while encouraging for testing, maybe to make them experience by themselves how they can help them in running their businesses and what kind of profits they can get, not only in terms of money, but also in terms of taking care about environment or some higher values. I believe that could work. And as I said, we as EIT Food have this Rising Food Stars Association that I encourage you to check it on our websites. It's the association of promising startups, and one of them it's Orbixk, which I believe operates really similarly to Green Bites. But of course, there are also others, like helping not only restaurants, but for example, retailers on checking which products are the most important to sell at that time, because, for example, they're going to the due date. So yes, but still building this community and this exchange and creating opportunities for the actors to meet and exchange. I think it's the most important in that process.
Thank you very much. So now let's go to Maria. So the question is, who is bringing you in to manage the food waste project with the Roskilde Music Festival? And yeah, I guess you're kind of being brought in as an external stakeholder. And is that model economically sustainable? And just to tack on a kind of another part of that question from someone else is that has the festival actually learned not to order so much food as a result of your interventions?
Well, to start off with the first question, for us to do this project for Roskilde Festival, we had to knock on some doors and to literally sell food waste, make food waste sexy again. We had to convince them that getting rid of the surplus food you might have is a costly affair. And if you have the money to host an event like that, there's a lot of cost related to it, then you also should find room in your budget to deal with the waste you're having. So Roskilde Festival has definitely, in Denmark at least, been first movers in terms of putting this in their budgets, because there is a lot of costs related to it when you need to move around so much food in such a short time frame. So for us to get to there, it was us being eager, us seeing an issue, us wanting to also help, and also we hope that doing this project with Roskilde Festival, Denmark in particular is quite the festival country. We hope that we can inspire more festivals or big events. It doesn't have to be music related, to actually see that if you take on the responsibility to host something this big, then you should do like Roskilde Festival and take on that responsibility financially also. So knocking on doors and be insistent that food waste is something that they have to deal with.
And just the follow-up question was, have they learned? So have these festivals that you work with, have they actually learned that they need to actually prevent that food from even being surplus in the first place, to actually order just as much as they need? Has anything changed there?
Yeah, thank you. Is it on? Yeah. So as I mentioned, as a part of the food waste project, we're also registering all the surplus food that we are collecting. And that is a lot of interesting data for us to use. And for instance, I mentioned milk before. That is one of the most wasted food items at the festival. So as a part of the food waste project, we're still trying to convince them to spend some more money on us dealing with this data and making preventive work. But we have found the sources of all this waste of milk. So they are using all this data that we're collecting to also prevent waste. But that is, in theory, much more difficult because in a festival setting, there are never 2 years that are the same. It's so much related to weather, to bands, what time they're playing. There's so many factors that makes you not being able to just copy 1 year to another. But the low-hanging fruits we're working on right now, or we started with working on after last time we had a festival, and hopefully we can continue also helping the festival prevent more food waste based on this project.
Thanks so much. Renata, over to you. So the question here is really about predictive analytics. What do the restaurants that you're working with, I think you had 18, it was something, that was the number of restaurants that you're working with right now, testing out your product. How are they responding to these kinds of tools? And just some insight into that would be really interesting.
Great question. We've noticed that there seems to be two main approaches. One is they use, as we had originally intended, which was great, that they order through us and they see it more as a tool to save time because normally when you're ordering food from a bunch of distributors, you have to make a bunch of phone calls, you have to go on a bunch of web stores, you have to make a bunch of emails and kind of just adapt yourself to each distributor. But with the tool that we have, we can cut down on the time, and like reducing the food waste is kind of like a nice byproduct. And then there's the other realm, which is the people who have a little bit more organization already. And they are most interested in just the raw predictions instead of having the breakdown from what they're going to sell and then us doing the calculation of what ingredient they should order and how much and when. We also have a lot of interest in having access to these predictions because, like was just mentioned, food consumption relies on so many different aspects, and it's really hard to predict as a human. But when we just continue dumping in more relevant data points, more relevant aspects, like it can be the day of the week, the day of the month, the time of the year, the rain, the temperature, the wind, the holidays, and hopefully in the future we can even add like travel statistics and just keep on adding more and more factors. And we do see that our like results do get more and more accurate as we dump in more relevant data, or we'll test which kind of background in which inputs are relevant. Yeah, so that was a bit of a stray, but yes, there's two main ways that people like to use it: through the application or through what we call a custom solution, which is where we just kind of provide them with the solutions to their own management system. Some of them use things like Microsoft Nav, so we'll just take the data, process it the way we do, and then send it back to them in their preferred format.
Great, thank you. Thanks for going into a little bit more detail there. I think that helps everyone to kind of understand how it informs decision making. So unfortunately, we're going to need to wrap up this part of this session and move on to the next part, which is on culinary conversations with chefs. Thank you so much to our 4 speakers, plus Katarzyna, who has left us now. This has been really interesting, and we'll make sure that you get some of the questions that are that we were unable to answer at this time. There are more coming in. So thanks again. And I'm going to now shift over to introducing our next session. So in the chef's talk, what we're looking at is really kind of digging deep into some of the issues that are experienced in the HoReCa sector, talking to the people who are working firsthand with the challenges that are faced when it comes to restoration, when it comes to being a chef and needing to deal with food waste, needing to be innovative, and needing to to do basically your part as a chef in reducing and preventing this massive problem that we've been discussing today. And so, as we've heard, one of the big parts of this is really how do we get this kind of food to surplus food that is close to expiration, for example, parts of foods that we're not usually consuming. How do we get that to taste delicious, to get people to actually want to eat it? And so that's what we'll tackle in this session. So I'm going to introduce the 4 people that you'll hear from today, and they're coming from Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland. So we have a great spread. And first of all, I'll introduce Jakub Emanuel Melik, and he's the executive chef at Novotel Warsaw Centrum Hotel. And he has a lot of experience working in the hotel industry, and he is a zero waste philosophy broker. I love that. And he's introduced a comprehensive program to combat food waste in his hotel. And he's been achieving some great results, and we'll hear more about that. And for years, he's been inspiring and motivating chefs to run sustainable kitchen operations and fight against food waste. So welcome, Jakub from Poland. Next, we have Martin Šimiras, and he's from Latvia, and he's been working in restaurant kitchens from the age of 16. And he's a chef and owner of several restaurants and food projects. And he's also the author of cookbooks and also of TV series. Next, we have Ada, and she taught me how to say her last name. It's Chiputkaite, and she's a member of the Council of Lithuanian Chefs and Confectioners Association. And she's an experienced consultant in the hospitality industry. And also she's working as a member of the Council of Lithuanian Chefs and Confectioners Association. She's specializing in healthy food and sustainability and has been awarded as a health ambassador by the Ministry of Health in Lithuania. And finally, we have Stella Kurik, and she's a member of the Estonian Head Chefs Association. And Stella has been working with fine dining restaurants in the past in other parts of the world. And now she's working at the Fotografska restaurant in Tallinn, where they're operating with a zero waste concept. So I want to kick things off by talking about some of the problems that you're experiencing in large-scale kitchens. So Jakob, could you kind of explain to us what is happening behind the scenes? Most of us in the audience have never been inside a large-scale hotel kitchen before. And can you describe why food waste is so easy to generate in these kinds of kitchens? And how you're actually working with that, just to set the scene so we know what kind of work that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Afton. So first of all, big hotel is a big operation. It means with my hotel, which is 742 rooms, it's a daily 1,300 breakfasts served, lunches, 600 dinners, and plus restaurant, plus room service, plus nowadays the delivery, which we created on the beginning of this year. So it's a big operation, which means in the terms of the food waste, first of all, you need to plan it. You need to measure it. I mean, we start like more than 6 years ago with measuring it, and we were shocked that we throw away so much food. So when we measured and we knew it from where it came, what it is, etc., we start to analyze and start to make some changes, not just with what we served, but what we offer to our clients, how we set up the buffet, how we sell it. So in general, it's quite a big operation which needs to be well managed, well planned. Your cooks need to know how much food they need to produce. So it's not like I give the menu to the cooks and they, okay, for 120 people, I will make this and this. Now you need to settle the Excel sheets. Can be Excel sheets or some other applications you can do, and say that for 120 people you need to produce 15 liters of the soup, other ingredients, etc. So like that, there is no overproduction. And of course, like was mentioned before, it's important for chefs to have some tools. I think this is something which can change now the kitchen life. It's to give the chefs tools like to measure the food waste, because without measuring, you don't know with what you fight. I mean, I can of course do in the restaurant some dishes which contains some spoilage, etc. But on the end, with the big operation, with the big numbers, you need to know where exactly is going, what kind of food, where is going to the bin, if it's banqueting, breakfast, if it's on the plate of the guest. And actually, with our hotel, it's the biggest issue was the food which was left on the plate. So also the communication to the guest, So generally, it's a big operation which need to be well managed with help of the new technology. I think this is the most important to don't be scared to use technology to make your life easier. As a chef that never have enough time to cover everything. So with the tools, I think it's easier and you can get the data which after you analyze and you make some changes step by step, because of course it is not that I received today the data and tomorrow I will change everything and I will have no problem in the hotel. It's constantly changing. It's a process which I think never ends. So basically that's it.
Yeah, you're juggling many balls in the air at the same time, and so thanks for that explanation and the challenges that you're dealing with. We'll get a little bit more back to that afterwards, but I wanted to move to Martins. You're purchasing products for your restaurants like chefs do, and you're often forced to purchase certain sizes or quantities that, you know, what does that look like for you in terms of food waste, and how are you dealing with this?
Hello. Yeah, one of the things what we spoke together with the farmers and suppliers is then we have to buy like that amount, that bunch of parsley, but we need like just small amount of parsley. And the global companies, if you want to buy like one bunch of bananas, you have to buy a box of bananas because they box everything. Everything is packed in a huge quantities. If you are a small restaurant, you are forced to buy more, or you are forced to buy lower quality because they repack it, pre-pack it in storage houses, and the quality always change. This is one of the things what we negotiating with all the suppliers at the moment. Because we are always, before the pandemic, we were like full house all the time. And now they close, open, close, open, close, open. And you have to order loads and small amounts, loads and small amounts. Before we ordered the big amounts, now we are facing this problem. And I don't know, we are speaking with them, how it's going to be solved. Let's see, detail by detail, every day. Let's see how it goes.
Thanks so much. And Stella, I know that you've been working in fine dining restaurants, and there's a lot of waste created there in a different way, let's say, than other kinds of restaurants, because perhaps you need a particular part of a vegetable and then that is valued, but the other parts are not, or you have to be very selective about the ingredients. So can you tell us a little bit more about how high standards, high aesthetic standards are influencing waste that is generated in fine dining?
Actually, I haven't never seen one of the chefs who is like, oh yes, use only this part and the rest throw away. Like I haven't never seen or worked with together with, luckily. But it has been, more waste, of course, because it's also like if you work in a bigger fine dining restaurant, the head chef sometimes doesn't have time to look what are the younger people doing, so they are not so correct with the things what they're doing. So they already producing lots of waste, and then it's if you need, sometimes you need only like one piece of like nicely gutted carrot, you throw the rest of it away. It was like 2 years ago, definitely, but now I think that it's also changing, like that you don't need to cut specific like French type of carrot to put it in the plate, the diamond shape. I know the chefs know it. So yeah, that it is. So, but I think it's now changing, I hope.
That's good to hear. It's good to hear that that perhaps there's a bit of culture change within kitchens, and also the change of how we view these particular cuts and things like that. I know that all of you are extremely aware about food waste, and you're implementing some pretty impressive approaches towards food waste prevention and reduction. But many chefs are not receiving the same level of education because people are busy. Let's face it. And it just seems like how do we actually deal with that problem? I know that, for example, Ida, you are coming from a farm, so you also have a very different approach, let's say, to seeing food waste and seeing it in the restaurant sector. How you approach that? What has this taught you, and how are you actually using that knowledge to teach others in informal and formal and informal ways?
Okay, so we learn by failing most of the time. Myself, many times I'm just a human. I've seen like diets which waste more food, less food, more eco-friendly diets, less eco-friendly diets than food you just make, and then you don't know what to do with the rest. As for example, yesterday we had nose to tail cauliflower, right? 4 ways, you use the other thing for the other thing, and you have a nice cut, but as well you can have the puree, for example. So in farm it's easier because you have either animals who help you to do that, either compost boxes, and if you live in a place which is big and has quite a big field, you always can use your food waste. As a human being for food making, because my husband is a chef as well, and I think he produces more waste, but he can still know better how to make it better than I myself. I'm a little bit more like domestic, so I approach it from the heart feelings, or like just a normal human being, let's say. Like today I had no time, so I had to order a meal in a box, which is bad, but it's reality, sometimes you have to deal with that. And so we just share. I have also students teach healthy nutrition, and they sometimes ask me, what exactly are you teaching? So I say, oh, you have to know everything. You have to know allergens, 14 allergens in Europe, right? Nobody knows the number. Young people, they come to the restaurants, they don't know how to make technological card. I tell them, listen, this is the first number. This is brutal. You can order this amount of food. You don't need to order half a kilo if you need 300 grams. So that is very important. And you don't have any expectations. I had a sociology teacher once who said, as you and me is assume, assume that someone knows something. It's not true. You have to start from the beginning. You have to tell them how to use the onion, what are the allergens, and all the other things that you know. And somebody else will teach you by asking questions to the answers you don't know. So I don't know if I answered the question correctly, but yeah, kind of like that.
No, thank you very much. I guess growing up on a farm, yeah, it teaches you a lot about how to deal with the resources in more creative ways.
Just a little bit like kind of down to earth. We just started this farm 1.5 years ago, but we had this restaurant business because I myself own a restaurant and my family owns, so we also were in this business for a long time. And in Lithuania, it's a very, very good concept, or very important to have this. You have to eat, and there has to still be on the plate, and only then you feel happy. So basically you have to overeat all the time in the restaurants. I mean, especially in our type of restaurant, which is Lithuanian food, it's not so healthy, a little bit greasy, and still people like when it's more. But of course, some towns, for example, like capital city, like in Vilnius, they want less portions. So the people are already educated. They are educated at schools, kids are educated, and also they they make this Swedish table in schools. Now it's not allowed, but before quarantine, the Swedish table were like, I don't know how to say that, but like many schools were adapting the Swedish table and they were cooking themselves. So this was also healthier because kids could eat as much as they would like. They could also choose it themselves. And even from this age, kids could just find what they like and be clean about the food. First 1 or 2 months, it was a mess house, like food fight. But after 2 months, they adapt really quickly, and then they just take potatoes, and then they take cabbage, and then something else. They do what they like, and they do not need to overeat or throw away the food, as you mentioned, because many people leave the food on the plate. So the kids, they feel satiated, and they don't eat anything. So 200 kids were like 2 kilos of food waste, which can be composted, and so on.
Great. I want to get back to that afterwards because I think you brought up some interesting points. But first, Jakob, what about, for you, how are you educating yourself on these issues? I know, for example, very recently or last night, or perhaps even this morning, when there was a workshop in Riga, and it was being led by Robostop, and how are you not only in that kind of event, but just getting some information about new practices, what to do? I'd like to hear more about that.
I think that the people never stop to learn. So each day it's a good day to learn something new. I think in general the fighting against the food waste it's constantly learning. So each time when I have issue with some product, I start to I'm not the best chef in the world. Even I don't consider myself as a very good chef, but I'm passionately curious about the things. So I always try to get from the products as much as possible. And I try to search in the social media, because now, of course, everything is posted, or neither on Facebook, Instagram, or other websites. So I just dig and check who do what with trimmings. I don't know what kind of new technologies are available. So this is what I do personally. And, each day I check also what I can change in the ecosystem of the kitchen where I work, because I think starting 6 years ago I found out I have a lot of things to change, but still nowadays when I go to this kitchen and it's changing due to the pandemic, post-pandemic, before pandemic, everything is changing, and we need to adapt ourselves to this situation and find the new ways. And I suppose like was said here before, the future and then what will happen in close future, all the studies, what kind of nutrition there will be. It's important for the chefs to never stop learning and checking what might be the trends or might be next year available on the market. So basically, this is my method.
Thank you. And Martins, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about food safety. Professional kitchens, they need to follow very strict food safety procedures so that customers don't get sick, and that's really important. But sometimes those procedures might conflict a little bit with food waste prevention and reduction. I'm thinking about storage and packaging and things. I also have maybe more waste generated, not just food waste, but also plastic waste. You mentioned to me earlier that you were implementing some new measures in your restaurants of how to kind of deal with these issues.
All of the chefs like clean film. We use clean film, like tons of clean film, like foil everywhere. Like if you can clean film it, you clean film it because it's hygiene, because it's secure, it's safe. It's oil, yeah, it's plastic. The same like all those suppliers, yeah, everything. If it's clean film, plastic, everything. We have containers. You saw them outside when you smoke. Like 3 containers for the carton, for the paper. 1 huge one for the bottles, glass. All of them we can give them for free. They recycle it. Then we have 1 small one for the green. So what that means, what we are actually using in a restaurant, is everything recyclable, all those things. But they come in, they use our time when we have to repack it, put it there, everywhere. In Latvia, there is no system like they have it in Iceland, I guess, or where I was last time. When you have those plastic boxes, when you can use them loads of times. Like all the suppliers can bring just 1 kind of box inside. you fold it, and they can bring it back, and they can exchange it all the time. We have those. It's huge problem, and it's the same problem with this packaging. If you order like the same basil or the banana example for the previous session, yeah, because you have one box. Now the supplier, what he does, the huge supply company, for example, he have like 6 stations where he has a meat station somewhere, he has a oil station somewhere, dairy station somewhere. He has small boxes, like small, like one, and he just brings in me like 6 boxes, and in each box there is one iPhone. Yeah, you know the Lego game? Yeah, it's the same. You have a huge box of Lego, Denmark, yeah, and like 3 small cubes of the real stuff inside. So I just don't like those chefs spending time packing, repacking everything and using clean film. We are getting rid of clean film in the kitchen, using more towels. But now, because the pandemic, we're using clean film again more than before.
Okay, yeah. So there's a lot of kind of contradictions to the behavior that you want to change, and what is preventing you from doing that simply because of food safety. So I'm also my partner. He's also was also a chef, and so I understand the love of cling film very much. I hear you on that one. So I wanted to move to Stella. I also know that there's a lot of regulations that you have to follow, and when you want to reduce food waste in your restaurant, it's not always possible to perhaps have the impact that you want to because of regulations. Are there any particular that you have, for example, related to composting, maybe that you wanted to discuss?
Yeah. So one of the problems is, do you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. The one of the problem is what to do if we produce leftovers in the kitchens, and luckily we have in Fotografiska we have the compost machine for that. But I think that we are at the moment only one in Estonia who has it. So like a couple of weeks ago, I asked my co-members in Estonian Chef Association that what they are doing with the leftovers, because they don't have this chance. So one of the guys who is working in catering, he told that he doesn't have any leftovers from the plates because he knows how many people are coming. He prepared the food in an amount, and if it's leftover, he pack it to go. But then one of the chefs told that, he's giving the leftovers to the chicken farm, but it's not legal. So he does it on a legally way, and yeah, that is possible to do, but it is like you will have probably the restaurant is gonna be closed down if they're gonna find out that. And I think that's it's a shame that we could use those leftovers to give the farms, but it's not just allowed.
So it's interesting, in our earlier conversations, we were talking a lot about how we have broken in many ways that nutrient cycle between households, kitchens, and farms. That before, when we were more based in rural areas, that we were able to feed leftover food back to the animals, and that in many ways is not advised anymore under current food safety regulations in the European Union. So there are some major issues that you come up against when you do want to make change. I'm going to shift gears now and go back to Ada. You've been traveling quite a bit in different parts of the world. What kind of exposures to other cultures, what has this exposure to other cultures taught you about food waste and how people perceive food waste in other parts of the world?
Well, I think rural communities or smaller communities love to share food. If they have something, they give it to others. In big cities, we don't know our neighbors. What can we share, So this is really a big thing. I used to live in Switzerland and South Korea, Scotland a little bit, Athens. And I really seen that, like in South Korea, I lived in a small island, let's say, not really small, but small island, let's say. So, I mean, everyone was sharing food, and they were like, come to eat and have something, and then you go to some woman, and then she's like, do you want some tangerines because it's the season and stuff. So really, people love to share food, and I think we still have this natural feeling of respect to the food, and I think all of us do. Sometimes we kind of hide it, cover it with mud or sand or whatever it is, or maybe some bling stuff, like expensive things, but somehow we still have it. And I think that's very important, because we have to go back to our roots, just that, just kind of slow down for a moment and think about it. In Lithuania, there is a thing for bread, you are not allowed to put bread on the ground or throw it or whatever, do anything with it. You have to kiss it and stuff like that. If somebody older would see you doing something bad to bread, they would probably slap you, that's really that bad. But I mean, there is a meaning in it. I mean, you have to respect your food, and everything you have on your plate is something you have to respect. And even with your cooking skills, like people would like to say like, oh, what can you teach me? You're younger than me. I have more experience in cooking than you. And that's true, but I mean, we can all share our experience, because everyone is interested in different things. Somebody is interested in zero waste, the other one is in vegan cooking, the third one is, I don't know, meat, steakhouse or something. So really like big scale cooking, we have no idea how it is in a big kitchen, even though we have experience in that field. So we really can events like that, and just talking. Yesterday we were at the same table, and the discussion was, I don't know, we came up with good manifesto. But yeah, really learned many things, and even the food research, what they find out, and that many leftovers are on the plates, exactly like in some Chinese towns, they have this all-inclusive, or in America even all-inclusive $12 or $15 meals that you can eat all you can, and if you leave the food on your plate, you have to pay. So basically, if plate is empty, you can leave, but if the plate is full or anything is left over, you have to pay. I think it's also a good monetary way as a solution, because many things we have to pay for something we don't do right, or we have to pay fines. I mean, it works, If we are speeding, we get fined, and that's the way it works. Maybe we should do the same thing. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, in different communities, they still have the respect for food, and I really want them to turn back to getting a small chicken in their home, for example, in their flat, if it would be allowed. Like to have a chicken instead of a cat or a dog, you would have the best source of protein and food. Of course, some other factors, but still, I mean, that's a very good thing. And also, people like to grow small, like cherry tomatoes and stuff. So it's coming back somehow. We should encourage it.
Thank you very much. I love the idea of a chicken replacing my compost bin in my apartment in Copenhagen. I have a question coming in from the audience for Jakob. Are there some large suppliers to Novotel that are willing to sell ugly vegetables and non-standard shapes of fresh food?
This is a difficult question because as a big hotel, we need bigger quantities, and of course, our suppliers. We try to choose the suppliers which are around the Warsaw district. We take all the vegetables, even this which are not looking beautiful, and this is what I learn with our purchasing manager, that we never give back unless it's I don't know, with mold or something, but we never give back any vegetables which are not looking beautiful, because each vegetables you can use. So this is one thing. About the suppliers, I think we manage also time to time get from our suppliers food which for sure they will not sell it. Like we did few events, we collect tomatoes in the summer to use 120 kilo of tomatoes for the gazpacho soup, which we serve on the event, and we get it for free. and also a kind of good example with the suppliers is that we, as a big hotel, we produce a lot of coffee grinds, and we exchange these coffee grinds for the blueberries, like American blueberries, because the farmers need this. It's a very good fertilizer for to grow the blueberries because of the acidity. So I think this type, even a big hotel or a big chain can do something about it. We have a hotel as the Accor Group in Romania, which is also exchanging the bio waste for vegetables, for example. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. That's really interesting that there's kind of this swap of products going on, and that you have a resource also to give back to farmers. I have a question coming in from the audience. This is for Martins. How responsive are our customers to your local and seasonal approach, avoiding exotic, out-of-season ingredients?
We are using both actually, but local are when they are in a season, they are in a season. So we use loads in a season. But about this planning, I just want to mention we opened a restaurant outside of the city, and we start to do the set menus, and a set menu is just on a pre-booking, and we don't have any waste. It's just worked perfectly because all the drinks, everything, you need 7 carrots, you go to the farmer, buy 7 carrots, that's it. The booking makes everything simple, and it's pandemic that helped. Yeah, but about those exotic ingredients and local ingredients and seasonal ingredients, we are living in a post-Soviet country, so here is a different people, so they like foie gras. They maybe first in a lifetime they taste the foie gras, that they have it. I'm a chef, I'm cooking for money. I'm not Messiah. So yeah, sometimes you just have to cook what they want. I need a full house Sometimes you have to, just do it. But the priority and the heart goes there. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Stella, when you're working with local producers, how is that influencing how you're treating the products that you're bringing into your kitchen versus, let's say, products that are a little bit more anonymous coming from global distributors?
At the moment, we try to use the most local products as we can, but still we're having like the products, of course, from some other countries, and we have the suppliers who are bringing the stuff from Germany and Poland through the Lithuania and Latvia and to Estonia. And I always say that we are the last country, and we get those parts what nobody else wants. So that everybody's picking the good ones away, and we get like some chives what are like they're not alive at all. So this, and then it's then you have to look the more of course the local farmers, and but it is the more north you go, the more seasonal it gets, and the harder it is to find. Like in the winter time, the fresh things, because only you have basically the potato and beetroot and some meat and of course the dairy products. But this is of course it's not that. Yeah, we try to use the local products, but it is not always possible.
Thank you. Ida, you've had a lot of experience working with food waste reduction in hospitals and schools. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? You said about the kind of buffet system, the Swedish table, as you call it, but very curious to hear a little bit more about the hospital part as well.
Okay, so the hospitals are bigger normally. You cannot have Swedish table or buffet style at hospitals. So they are making other ways of like pre-planning, as you mentioned, as well as I was doing my internship in Switzerland. I was working in a hotel where they pre-planned everything. In the morning, they give you the menu to choose, and then they'd serve it in the evening and for lunch, and that's done. So almost no waste. That's a very cool idea. So, but back to the hospitals, yes, they have these new equipments, people working in stations. These stations are huge. If you can imagine, I don't know, it was like a huge hall, and you have like 5-6 stations in a horizontal row, and everyone is doing one thing, you know. So it's like a factory. Like, for example, you have 3 basic meals a day, and you have 2 snacks, and it has to be really highly regulated. For example, like milk cannot have more sugar than it has, and actually it naturally has more sometimes. So yeah, there were so many issues, and we were just trying to find solutions and help them to I don't know, create new recipes and just how it works, maybe share our experiences. But yeah, some hospitals really invested a lot of money, and I think that is a key part as well, because you have to have money to be able to do good on big scale, and many times it's a problem. As Jakob said, right, your CEO is really interested in sustainability, so it's really cool because it's going all the way from the top, and everybody knows that you can do that. You have to do that. Somebody else is gonna clap or say, good, you did good. But if you have someone else who is really interested only in the profit, which of course we work for profit, but also we have to, as you said, we have to make compromises. It's impossible that, oh, everything is flowers, beautiful, you know. We do make compromises, but we still kind of go step by step, as you said, like struggle on that way. And sometimes you go backwards a little bit, and then you go forwards and back and forth. And so basically that's the same with hospitals. So some hospitals invented their own kitchen, which was absolutely better than having outsourcing food. Every time they outsourced food, or 80%, 90% of the time that I saw, it was always worse. And the food was cheaper, the food was less nutritious, the food was less appetizing, and so on. So if a hospital made their own kitchen, invested in that, they always went better with food, tastier. And there is a saying in Lithuania, you go to lose weight in hospital, because you have small portions and unedible food. So we changed it a little bit, but then it's, again, back and forth, back and forth. So many times it's also political, and they many times are sued for that from the companies who outsource the food. And I know exact situations when that happened. So it's a struggle, actually. But I think if you have motivation, you have to just be like this, horse who has blindings, and just go to the goal, and you know that it's good, just do it, because so many people will have their interest in it, and they will say, oh, this is bad, or you are bad, you have your own interests, we just have to do it. If you know it's right, you know not everything is perfect, but you still have to do it, and you have to get the goal. So I think that's strengthen yourself.
Thank you. So I'm just mindful of the time right now that we have left. I wanted to end on a note where also people who don't work in large-scale kitchens could also get some insight into some practices that they could implement at home. So starting with Martins and then moving to the left, just very quickly, if you could each come with some advice for people like me in my household of what I can do to reduce food waste in my own kitchen.
Yeah, all this what I hear today was about numbers, statistics, all the Greta Thunberg stuff. I think the thing that it's really simple, down to earth. It's all usual normal people know 10 to 15 recipes, not more. Okay, let's buy a cookbook and learn like 100 recipes, and the waste will be short, because we just, like usual people, don't know how to cook, and it's getting worse and worse. Just cooking skills. Cook more. Read a book.
Thank you. Jakob.
So my tip is just to don't make a big shopping. Just buy the things which you will use today and tomorrow. Don't buy a lot of stuff. and plan it. Make fun with the family cooking, which also will learn, maybe not from the books, maybe from someone who knows to cook, but just make the shopping little for maximum 2 days, and make some planning, and that's it, I think.
Thank you.
Here, I think be stingy. Be stingy on the amount of food, but be wealthy on the quality of food you buy. So buy more expensive but better quality food and less of food, because we always buy too much and throw it away. And yes, just cook, plan, and I don't know, just less is always better. That's it.
Yeah, so I agree with all of it. And also maybe if you plan and but you still like, okay, I don't want to eat this next day or in this week, maybe try to think how to store it. Like, can I freeze it? Maybe the freezing is, and then in 1 month you will, oh, okay, now I want it. And and then it's easier also for you, and maybe you don't have time, but you already cook it, you can take it out, melt it, you have a meal for the evening. And also, like if you're making like chicken, like whole chicken or something that you have the bones, make stock, put it in the, also freeze it. You can make it soup if you have time, and yeah, think more what you can do.
Thank you all so much.
Soup is a very good way of actually using your waste many times, and don't throw away the water from the veggies because it has lots of nutrients in it, please.
Okay, so tonight I'm making soup. I have that. And I'll work on getting a chicken. So thank you all so much. Much appreciated for your insights and bringing us into your world, a world that not all of us have been exposed to necessarily behind the scenes. So now, because we're kind of rounding off the conference, I know that a lot of people in Riga have been sitting for a while, and also those of you viewing online are also perhaps needing to move a little bit. So we're going to go to the final thing, which is basically 2 questions on Slido that we would like everyone to answer. And these questions are based on the discussions that we've had today. So the first question is about, what do you think is the most significant takeaway message? And the second is, what is one concrete action that you will take to reduce the amount of food waste in your household? So in order to use Slido, if you're not familiar with this tool, basically scan that QR code on the left-hand side there, and go in to, or you can go into slido.com, and then you basically put in that code there. That's on the bottom of the screen, 023945, to answer the survey. I'm going to do that along with everybody here. So scanning the code. And those 2 questions that I mentioned are going to come up for you. You can just put in a very short answer if you like. We don't need an essay necessarily, unless you're extremely passionate about answering the question. And we will be able to see some of these questions, some of your answers and responses coming up on the slide there. As people log in, I know this takes a little bit of time. Okay, I don't see so many people who have entered the Slido, so perhaps that's also a sign that people have not gone into it. So while you're answering the questions, I'm just going to basically close off the conference today. And I want to say thanks to everyone for joining this event. And as you've heard, there's a need to continue collaborating at a regional level to exchange know-how in order to prevent and reduce food waste. There's a lot of tools and a lot of reports that have basically been generated, not for this conference necessarily, but before the conference has taken place. So on the website for Great Taste Zero Waste, you can download some of those fantastic resources. There's a toolkit, for example, and this toolkit has some really practical tips for how to plan and store and use the food that you have at home. So again, just making it a little bit easier for you to do your part, and also to demand of society that the rest of society does their part. Because as we've heard, a lot rests on us as consumers. But this basically, we know that that all actors in the food system also need to step up and play their role. So the Great Taste Zero Waste Conference has been arranged jointly by the Royal Danish Embassy, by the Nordic Council of Ministers in Latvia, by the Danish Cultural Institute and EIT Food, and it's being funded by the European Union. And if you know someone who is really interested in the topic but couldn't attend, please feel free to send them the link to the conference, or even to the website, greattastezerowaste.eu, and they can rewatch the conference or different presentations from the conference. So now we can see some of the responses coming up here on the screen. So most significant takeaway messages. There's so much potential for the future, and there are people who are also really interested in making it better. Exchange experiences, knowledge, and ingredients. Be more open-minded. Less is always better. Less but better. There are trade-offs between zero waste and consumer demands for exotics. It's possible to reduce food waste to zero globally. Changing attitudes is the biggest challenge. Openness to change, changing our habits and how we've always done things. Cooking soup. Someone has their menu for tonight's dinner, and we need to work together. Yes. And answering the second question here, we can see in the word cloud, one concrete action. We see that people are going to plan their meals in smaller chunks or portions. Freezing leftovers, shopping less, collecting their coffee grounds, planning better, cooking with neighbors. So there are lots of different tips that we can all take home with us today. And I guess that basically brings us to the end of the conference. And I'd like to thank everyone, both those of you who participated online and those of you in Riga who are participating in real life. It's great that we are able to have such a hybrid conference where everyone can participate from their different corners of the world. Thanks again, and take care and enjoy your zero waste evening. And I hope you implement some of the things that you've heard today. Thank you very much. Bye-bye, everyone.